1.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to People Add Value Experience. Today, I'm exceptionally honored to have a guest on this session, and his name is Tyler Fuller.
Great to be with y'all.
Yes. Thank you, Tyler, for coming on. I'm really excited. So today we're going to be discussing a little bit about and really diving into fostering, adopting, some resources, some training, as he is an instructor for some training. So this is going to be an amazing episode for those folks that are either looking into it or, you know, maybe have already fostered or adopted and looking for some additional resources and how to enhance your relationships with your children or child in whatever instance. And if you have other folks that, that have done fostering, adopting, and helping them out. So again, just really want to jump in. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Or follow, depending on how you're consuming this, YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. So Tyler, first and foremost, thank you very much. Again, we really appreciate you coming on. But I'd like to just know a little bit more about you and your background and sort of just leading up to how you got here in Florida.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Panhandle of Florida. We're recording right now in Niceville, Florida. It's culturally, it's Alabama, right? And so I was born and raised here. If you know our area, you know that's how it goes. And it was a small town. Like when I grew up, this is the best way to put it. If you know our town now, now you know it because it's near 30A and it's all these really sexy beaches and all that. But when I was coming up, the main shop on our strip was a taxidermy shop where like you would take your deer and they would stuff it. It ain't like that now. And so I came up in this little town, had kind of a traditional family, 2 parents and for a while. And then my sister, an older sister. I was never really good at sports to this day. Like I had a lazy eye and it's not who I am, but it is who this town is. And so I was kind of felt like a misfit, like can't catch a baseball, don't care. I've never watched a college football game. Like it's never been who I am. And so that always put me in a place in our town where I just kind of felt like a misfit. And for me, the place where I found like my identity and like my fit, my community, my people, was in like youth group culture. I came up in a church. And so, I was baptized when I was a baby and I was like in Sunday school and I was the second best at memorizing Bible verses or whatever. Cause I'm not a super hard worker. Like I'm not going to be the number one, and so, yeah, I kind of came up in a church and that was like formative for me and super helpful, which by the way, I'm a pastor. So like there's some context there.
That's awesome.
And so that kind of became a formative for me and part of my identity. And then at the same time, Leslie Schmidt, she moved here. Her parents were military. This is a military town we're in. She came in about 4th grade, and she lives about a mile from where we're recording right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Coming up. Yeah.
Wow.
And so did I, actually. We live about a mile apart.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so she and I had known each other for a long, long time, but we're one of these stories where I asked her to go to my senior prom, like when I'm 17 years old. And that was like our first date. We'd known each other for a while, but I asked her out. We go to prom, and then we kind of start dating. And then I went to her prom. And she's a year younger than me. I go to her prom, and that was in 1999, and we're married. So like that's our story.
Wow.
We're high school sweethearts. Like we never broke up. We had a long distance relationship, pre-cell phones, long distance relationship. That's a different.
Was that some like handwritten letter stuff? Or?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Oh,
I
wow.
kept them all.
Oh, that's so cool.
We're doing this thing. Oh man, yeah, your older audiences will understand this. Phone cards, where you pay $20 at Walmart and you're like, oh, you got 100 minutes on the phone because we don't pay long distance. We don't have cell phones. I kept all those phone cards, just got a stack of them. So
that's great.
Yeah, it was helpful for us. And also just we're kids when we're dating. So having that distance where we had to really learn to communicate was a big deal for us.
Huge.
And so eventually I go off to college. I lived here in this town my whole life in the Panhandle, kind of backwoods. It's not anymore, but it was. And then I went to college in St. Augustine, Florida, to study. I'm a philosophy religion major and I have a youth ministry minor. I was always going to go into ministry. So I kind of like a call to ministry. And this will get into my foster care story as well. In my whole life, I'm 42 years old and I'm a pastor. Like I tell people for a living, like developing spiritual lives is part of what I do. In my whole life of 42 years, there's been 2 instances where I really feel like I heard a thing from God that was for me. Like 2. I know people that say like every day they're hearing from God. God bless them. It ain't me. I'm working real hard though, you know? And so 2 instances in my life where I really felt like there was a thing that God had called me to do. The first was this call to ministry. I'm like 14 or 15 years old. And I just knew like, this is the thing I'm going to do. And for me, it's it. That's what I've been doing. So I went to college to become a youth minister. And that's what I did for a long, long time. I'm a missions pastor now, which it's not a common term. The best way to think of it is like, we're like a large multi-site mega church where I work. And I basically run all the parts of our church that look like nonprofit work. I'm like the United Way of our church. It's amazing. It's the best job.
Yes.
So the first time I really felt like I heard a thing from God, number one of 2 total ever, was this thing about a call to ministry, which is how I get to college in Flagler. I was just a regular school, not a Christian school, which was great for me. But the second thing I ever heard in my life where I really felt like it was a call on my life, a thing that I was built and designed to do, was adoption. And Leslie, the same way. Before we were married, like when we're dating, we both had some sense that adoption would be part of our story. And like, we knew nothing. You know, we don't know what that means. We don't know how it works. All we knew was like, this is going to be part of who we are. Whether we get married or not, it was just kind of, it's been embedded in us. It's like, it's in our bones. And so that's been a background process for us our whole lives and our whole relationship. I graduated college and we got married. This is like old school stuff. Also like evangelical culture stuff as well. We get married. I'm 21 years old. She's 20. So like we didn't drink at that time, but if we did, she couldn't have toasted at our wedding. But that's 20 years ago. Like here we are running strong, you know, doing the thing. So we got married out of college. I go into youth ministry and she becomes a teacher. Both of us love working with kids. Again, like it's built into who we are. It's like, it's in our DNA.
Right.
And we spend years doing that. Eventually I go to seminary. And all the while we're talking both about having kids biologically, but also we're always talking about adoption. Never not part of the conversation. But also we got married when we're children. Like if you know anything about human development, like we literally were not fully developed when we got married. We had about 5 years left before our brains were fully formed. So we went a while before we wanted to have kids because we were self-aware enough to know we're young and this is all pretty early. Let's like be young people who are married. So
I do have a quick question.
Yeah,
so did your parents, like both sides, were like, hey, go for it? Or was there a little bit of hesitation on one side or the other?
This is all pre bringing in our parents. This is just us chatting. Like
no, I meant as far as like getting married at 21 and 20. So were they like, oh, you guys are really young? Or is this, again, like you said, part of that growing up in the church and having that understanding? Is that where that came from?
I would say that both of our sets of parents were enthusiastic about who we were. Like, you know, we were both trying to live like quality lives and do the right things. And we were trying to treat each other well. Like we don't have one of these stories where we broke up every 6 months and we had to work through like learning to not be toxic people. Right. We just kind of were lucky to be relatively healthy. Like we've grown a lot since then. Marriage is hard, y'all. Like, it just is.
Very hard.
That's true for us. It's hard for us as well.
Very hard. Very hard.
But we did have, for teenagers, for kids, we had a remarkably healthy relationship with each other. And so I guess the best way to put it is they did not oppose it in any way, but both sides would have preferred. She wasn't done with college. Like both of us would have preferred, you know, why not a couple more years?
Right.
But for us, like we've been dating 4 years.
Right.
It doesn't matter that the first year I was 17 years old. Like that's still a long time.
Sure.
And so we felt ready. And like, you know, as a dad, are your kids ever ready for the thing that they're doing right now?
Nope. You know? Put them back in the bubble.
Exactly. Probably not. Like our kids are always 3 steps ahead of where we want them to be. And that's certainly the case for us.
Right.
So I would say they were supportive, but it's not what they would have done had they made the story. But it's also for us, like we're kids. It's our first real step out. Like this is it. We're doing the thing. Right. I went down to sit with my mom and I'm like, my parents are divorced at this time. I'm sitting down with my mom and I'm like, hey, how much does it cost to be married? Because I got to know, like, what kind of, I'm a youth ministry major, like philosophy major. What money will I, that's the only question. Not should I get married? Not is Leslie the right person? Like, can I have enough dollars? And so we made this whole little list. Like, how much does insurance cost? How much does rent cost?
Wow.
I don't know. You can cut this if you want. At that time, we did all the math. It was like, if I could make $24,000 a year, I could probably afford to be alive with another person, like who's in college.
That's so great. That's so great.
And so when I graduated, I didn't have a lot of prospects for jobs. Philosophy is not a super hot field right now, like, or even in 1999 or whatever. So I go to work in the kitchen at Chick-fil-A, and there was 2 kitchen managers, both philosophy majors. Very thoughtful kitchen.
Oh, the conversations.
Exactly. And when I set up that job or whatever, the guy who runs the stores is like, he wants to keep me on. I'm trying to do ministry, and so I don't want to stay there. He wants to keep me on. He's like, what's it going to take? And I just had this conversation with my mom. And I was like, it's going to take $24,000. And this is crazy. And health insurance for both of us, because Leslie's like a part-time cashier. So she's like a 20-hour-a-week person making minimum wage. At that time, it's probably $8 an hour with full health insurance at Chick-fil-A.
Right.
So it was a good deal for us. And that was like the key piece. I'm pretty conservative.
So did he pull, like, he's like, yep.
He did. He was a new businessman.
Wow.
And so he didn't love the deal he made. Like 2 years later, he was like, hey, how do you feel about Leslie not getting health insurance? I was like, how do you feel about us not working here?
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a wild, but again, like this amount of certainty I had, it's been like a blessing and a curse for me. Like, yeah, high-minded, high ideals, a little bit of an egomaniac, all of that's in play here. And so I was never, should I get married? Is Leslie the right person? Can I get married? It's like, I have to know that I can support my family here. And he put the number on the table, like, that's that. And so we got married, and yeah, so we waited a long time to have kids because we knew we were young, and she finished school, and we did young married stuff. Like, we went to Hawaii. That ain't going to happen again for a while.
Wow.
We're super glad we did it.
Right.
And we just kind of grew up and established, like, what does it look like for us to be a family independent of each other? We're still in St. Augustine. Both of our families are still here in the Panhandle. And maybe 6 or 7 years into our marriage, we started talking more seriously about having kids. And again, simultaneous conversations. We know we want to have kids, and what we mean biologically when we say that, but we also know that adoption is part of who we're going to be. And so what's our first step here? And I ended up finishing seminary, moving back to our hometown. So we're back in the Panhandle. Both of our parents are here. And we had our first kid biologically. That was like a decision we made. We know we wanted to be in the adoption world eventually, but let's do this biologically first. So we had a biological child, and it was great, and she's amazing, and you know, it's the best. And even then, I'm young, and so we're learning, like, okay, now I've been young married for a while. What does it look like to be a father?
Right.
Your time is
everything.
Family.
Yeah,
it's all
growing.
different.
Yes.
Yeah. Was I ready? Probably not. You know, is anybody?
No. Yeah. No.
And if you think you are, you know, oh boy, God bless you.
The funny story is the guy I work. So at Cubicle Farm, you know, the guy right across from me, he has a standing desk. So I see his head. It's very much like, you know, Tim Allen and The Neighbor, and like Heidi Ho, that whole thing. So we're chatting, he's like, he just has this concern. He's a very quiet guy, but we always laugh, and he has almost like a quiet internal laugh, and his face gets real red. So we're talking, but I see his face. I'm like, hey man, what's wrong? Like, he just had a kid, 2 months old, I think. And we're talking, and he's like, man, it's pattern recognition. I'm like, pattern? What are you talking about? He's like, I'm trying to determine when he's crying, if it's, you know, milk or diaper or sleep. And I'm like, oh buddy, I said, listen, like, you know what I do? I get if a kid's crying, I put them on the bed, I give them, you know, milk or whatever, formula, whatever it is, change the diaper, put them in my arms, see if their eyes start to close, or put them in the pack and play, and then they're out. So you're covering all three within like a 3-minute period, and then you're good. But I felt so like he's such his brain is such a high like analyst, and he's so worried about that. And I think that just reflects, like, every parent is just like, there was a young Sheldon, Riley, my oldest, likes to watch young Sheldon, and the younger, or the oldest son, who's very young though, is having his first kid. And it's like the old station wagon. So he's trying to put a car seat in, and he's like, he's putting his knee in the car seat and pulling the seatbelt closed. And like, I mean, I've done that before. Like I thrust my knee and I'm like pulling those in the latches, you know, just to make sure. So it's always interesting to hear. And I don't know if anyone's ever, you can read as many books or babysit, but until you have your own kid, you're never really truly ready.
Absolutely. And even after you have your kid, you're not ready.
That's true too. That is right.
And, you know, fast forward a bit, like this will be the second half of the podcast. The question that your engineer brained cubicle partner is asking is like, what's the need here? He really wants to understand, like, what does my baby need and how can I meet that need? Well, that's the right question to ask.
That's right.
It's super hard to answer, especially when the baby is pre-verbal.
Right.
So I love your approach. Is like, I don't know what the need is. I'm doing it all.
It's the blanket approach. Probably not the best all the time, but it's worked thus far, right?
Yeah, because the heart there is like my child's expressing a need. How do I meet this need? And as a dad, like, you know, some of us are blessed with a great intuition and just know. I was not. And so I'm like you, like, okay, the baby needs a couple things. Let's just do them all. I'm gonna do my best here.
Blanket it all. Well, it's funny because our little guy who just turned 1, like the other night, like he was waking, like some nights he'll be fine. He'll wake up maybe once, twice. And he's, you know, like also, teething. Like you don't know. Oh, like teething. That's why, because they've been sleeping for like months. What's going on? Oh, they start teething. Or for some reason, like he's starting to get right into more milk and out of the formula. And so like he had a lot of digestive issues when he was younger. And so I pick him up and I'll burp him like after the fact. And it's like, you know, a couple of twice. And then next thing you know, he's ready for bed. So it's such a trial and error. I mean, honestly, because everyone, all children are different too. Like, I mean, and that's the variation here is like, oh my goodness, like every child, we've tried something. Nope. And then, okay, what's next? Because that didn't work. It worked on these 2 children, but for some reason, not that child. So it's just so interesting.
Yeah. And it's why, you know, I'm a dad too. And I really, really wanted to do it right. Like, I really want to be a great dad. And so I'm the same way as your engineer, buddy. Like, I'm like, let me read the right books and I'll know the right information. And if I press these buttons in this order, like I will be a good dad. And you know,
that's so funny.
if only it was so simple.
Right.
Like every kid is different. We're all different. We're all dealing with situations we've never encountered before. And so you have to kind of build the bridge while you're crossing it, you know.
100%. It's very much an art and a science. I don't think it's one or the or you know, art philosophical. Like it's very much a combination of both.
Yeah, probably like 3 times a week. I say like we're playing jazz, which means like there's some structure here, and I know how the things work. But also,
love that analogy.
I don't know what's next.
I love that analogy. So as we're wrapping up here, Tyler, and I do appreciate your time. I want to ask you, so I always ask a special question. I don't know if you went all the way through any of my podcasts, but I ask a special question. So one of the more recent ones, and I think it's the most appropriate too, because it'll be very interesting to hear what you have to say, is if you had an extra day to live in your life, would you want to live it in the past or the future?
Well, that's a great question. And after this day, now I got to get to the rules. After this day, I go back to the day I'm at now.
Correct.
I'm going to go to the past. I'm going to live that future day one way or the other. I'd rather go back to a day that I particularly felt connected to or loved, you know, like draw those feelings back and get back to running where I am.
Gotcha.
What day? I don't know. No.
Yeah. It's been one of my favorite questions to ask people, because you get both.
Yeah.
Which you know, some people have experienced either trauma, passing of a loved one or whatever, and they want to go back and they're like, I wish I could have had one more opportunity or chance or whatever. And other people go like, I'm happy with where I'm at. I would be very curious to see where I'm in the future, or where my kids are in the future, or whatever else. And it's fascinating to me to hear sort of the background, because some people, they're like immediate when they answer, like instantaneous boom. And then some people, like you just did, sort of sit and think about it a little bit too. So I think it's a fascinating question to ask people. So I appreciate that.
Maybe it was hard for me because the bottom line is I want to live where I'm at.
Yeah.
You know, like that's sort of like how I operate.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting definition. I looked it up a while back between ruminating and meditating, right? Like the whole negative connotation, if you will, of ruminating compared to like meditating and using that as a positive energy and force going forward. So, but Tyler, I want to give you the opportunity to see if you had anything else, you know, to wrap up with now that we think about the conversation we had. Any other tidbits, anything else, questions, comments, concern, anything else that you have?
No, this is the thing that I love. Everything I talked about is like the things that I love most. And so like I got I'm on social media on Facebook. My name is Tyler Fuller. The blog is on Instagram. It's Unremarkable Conjecture. My email is tylerjakefuller@gmail.com. And so like every part of this is a whole solar system of experience and information. So if something hits and you want more, you want to like just chat about it. Like, this is what I do. And I'd love to do that. You feel free to reach out to me directly, follow up with the resources we listed. But yeah, if you're in here exploring, like, God bless you, do a good thing and do it the best you can.
Awesome. Well, again, I want to say thanks for coming on, Tyler. It's been an amazing experience. Thanks for coming on People Add Value Experience. And I personally got a ton of value, which is literally what this is for. And I cannot wait to get this shared out and get some responses for people. So again, thanks very much.
Appreciate thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right. Thanks. It's probably a little inappropriate, but have you ever seen the movie called Whiplash?
I didn't see Whiplash. I know I'd love it because I'm a drummer.
So good. I mean, there's some high level cursing, but it's like Miles Tyler, because he plays in Maverick, but he's playing some really good movies. And then J.K. Rowling,
who's the best.
And he oh man, in that movie, it is, but it's psychological. That's where I think you'd really like that part. Is it's a lot of psychological with a lot of awesome drumming. So you guys, just to recap here, both grew up in the local area. You went off to college, experienced long distance relationship, used some of the old school writing, had the phone cards, which I'm very familiar with, being deploying, and we didn't have that either. And you go travel and you have to scratch off that stuff and get everywhere, and then use that. And that's really cool that your parents bought off on that for younger folks, because I think that's a little bit different just nowadays. And some people are like, okay, I got it. And then sometimes later the parent accepts it, sometimes doesn't. And then growing up, in the church and having that mindset, y'all were both thinking about adoption way long before it even became the time. And then how long did you say you were married before you had your biological kiddo? How long was it?
7 years, something like that.
7 years. Okay, so 7 years. Pulled the chocks, pulled the trigger, if you will. Had the kiddo, your oldest kiddo, and then okay, so that's where we're at. So you had the oldest kiddo. So what's next?
So then, again, I have good plans at this point in my life. Like, okay, I know I'm raising this baby. I'm learning things. I'm an awesome dad. This is going to come back later. Like, this is foreshadowing, because like you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
I got this thing covered. Like, I got a baby. I love the baby. It feels great to have a baby. I'm figuring stuff out. It's going great. And so my plan always was like, let's have a baby biologically and let's adopt one. And we're going to have 2 kids. And if we have a girl biologically, we're going to adopt a boy, and we'll have both kinds. This is very simple. Like, where we ended up. So like, this is funny to you.
Yeah.
This, by the way, is not how my family ended up. And so we're like, yeah, so we had the one biological, it's a girl. Let's go ahead and find out what it takes to adopt a boy.
Right.
And I don't want to go too deep in this, but there's a lot of ways to learn all of this. But we knew nothing except like we had this sense of calling. Like, this is what we're supposed to do. This is what we're built to do. It's a right thing to do. We knew all this, but we don't know how it works. And so we kind of go in the research phase. Like, we know that we want to adopt a kid. We know we want it to be a boy. How do you adopt a kid? You want to put a sign in the yard or like. And so we start just doing the research, and
just go put something in everyone's mailbox, like, "Hey, if you know someone,
boy, please." Hey, kid, you look cute.
Where's your mom and dad? Nowhere around, huh? That's right.
And so, in fact, this is probably why some people have come to this episode. Like, if we're tagged as adoption and foster care, there are definitely people who are at this phase, like the research phase. And so here's the very, very short and dirty explanation. There's 3 ways that you can adopt a kid into your family. The first is international adoption. And so we learn about how that works. It's unbelievably complicated, and it's like all adoption. It's beautiful, and it's messy, and it's broken, and it's complicated. It's all the things. If you're thinking about international adoption, I care a lot about doing it in countries that have Hague approval. Like, that's a really big part of it. Because international adoption adds a significant layer of complication. It's not complication that families can't figure out. They figure it out every day.
Right.
And it's still beautiful, and it's still holy, and there's still so much good to do. But there's a lot to know about cultures and what it takes to raise would you say a third culture child? That's a child that doesn't match the culture of either of their parents' passports. And so that's a different set of complications. They're not quite where you are. They're not quite where they're from. They're a different thing. And So doing that sort of research is very, very helpful, regardless of where you're thinking about international adoptions. Use an agency. There's a lot of great agencies out there. If you're trying to do faith-based adoptions, Bethany is kind of the biggest name in it, and they do things well, and they've researched it well. But that's kind of where international adoption starts. And we just went down that rabbit hole. We sort of assumed that's where we'd end up, because we had friends that had done it and we'd seen the process work out. You know, I'm not ashamed to like talk money. Like, international adoption is very expensive.
Yes.
There's no way around it. It's just very, very expensive. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but it's a thing to be aware of. Like, there's a lot of money involved in the process. Sometimes there's lawyers. There's always international travel involved. Yes. There's paperwork and visa issues. And that wasn't a deal breaker for us. We were really trying to figure out, this is like a key thing in my life in general. Is this the right thing for us? Like, is this right? And we went all the way down to the end. Like, we chose an agency. And for us, I'm not a feelings person. I'm a very much like a logical order person. But we got to a place where all the pieces were in place and we knew how it worked. And we were hypothetically ready, except that it didn't feel like the right fit. Which is different than saying it's not the right thing to do, because that's not at all what I'm saying. But it was clear for us, like, this road is not the right fit. It wasn't clear for us why. It's still not clear, except that I love where we ended up.
Right.
But we just knew, like, when it was time to pull the trigger, it just wasn't quite right for us. But that didn't change like this, like, bone deep calling for adoption. And so we're like, okay, back to the drawing board. Because like I said, there's 3 ways to do adoption. The second is domestic private, which is like you find a local agency. There's 10,000 of them. Every town has 2. Or you find a lawyer and you do a person to person, like where you know a family who has a pregnant mom who knows that they're trying to do this beautiful and difficult thing of finding a home that will be appropriate for their kid if they don't feel like they're that home. And so domestic private is an option. And so we did the whole thing again. Like, okay, we found an agency. You have to make a little book. This is such a weird thing. You make, excuse like my callousness here, a sales pitch for yourself. We're the Fuller family. We like to garden. I love surfing. Look how beautiful we are.
Right.
Look at this empty bedroom in our house. You make, here's
like
who
a big
we are.
Neon like arrow.
Exactly. We're smiling.
Child wanted here.
Everything's great here. Yeah. And so you make a book. The real thing here is you're trying to convey the nature and character of your family, because in domestic private adoption, the choice belongs to the biological mother, who is actively choosing to find a new home for her child. Which again, like, beautiful thing, difficult thing, broken. It's everything. But for a mom to realize like that she wants something better for her child and she feels like she might not be able to provide that, that's like devastating. But also making a choice like that is a little bit beautiful. And so, but the point here is that because in domestic private situations, the mother is making the choice, not the state, which we'll get to in a minute. The mother chooses, like, this family looks like a good fit for my child. And the mother might say, I want my child to grow up in this family, and that's it. Like, I don't want communication. I don't want further relationship. I just want to be able to make changes in my life that'll make me healthier and know that this kid is going to be okay. Right. But mother also has the right to say, but I also want continued relationship and I want to be there for birthdays. And mother has rights in this scenario. And again, that's a complication. Right. This is also a money thing. Like, there's money involved.
I've heard so many stories like, hey, also pay for my college education or also pay for my hospital bills. And it really starts to stack up. Yeah. And again, when you adoption is complicated. There's no way around it. Right. Like, if you've heard simple narratives like I saved a child, someone is either naive or not telling the whole story. Like, kids are designed by God to be raised in families. And when a kid is not raised in their biological family, there's a ton of good that can be done, but we're starting from a place that is inherently broken. Right. It doesn't mean it can't be redeemed. Everything can be redeemed. Like, again, this is pastor talk, right? Right, yeah. But it's not the way it should be. Right. And so you just have to understand, like, okay, we're starting with a situation that requires redemption, and it's going to be complicated. Because again, mom needs college, mom needs health care, we want this baby to be healthy, and the baby's still in utero, and in utero health is incredibly important. Huge. And so it's appropriate
if you're trying to say, I care about this baby, we'll do it. Don't I also care about mom? And don't I also care about baby in utero?
Right.
And the answers are yes, but also like, well, college, Bill, that feels complicated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Super quick story about that.
Yeah,
Don't forget where you're at. Super quick story. So like, as we're going through the process with the younger two, the parents, the bios, did not have driver's license. So my wife driving an hour away to go to the court, finds out like, hey, they're running late. Why are they running late? Well, they're walking. And she was, I don't remember how far along, because as we're adopting one, she got pregnant with another, that whole story. Yeah. So she's like, I'm going to go pick her up because I don't need her walking in this heat, stroking out, whatever else happening. Right. Like, so it was very much having that understanding of like, absolutely. Like you said, right. I mean, it's, how good is your oven that you're baking in? I know it's a terrible analogy, but like you want that, like the perfect temperatures and on the right rack, right? Like horrible analogy again, but I'm just saying like it's, you know, cause baking a baby in an oven, but 100% importance because I mean, it's like, it could be cigarettes, it could be alcohol, it could be, just, you know, water, right? Are they drinking, you know, good water? Are they doing Cokes and Red Bull and Monsters every day? While you can't control all that, it's really good to have that understanding because all of those are like data points or variables. How the kid in is utero? What is the terminology in?
I'll take it in utero. You Nirvana fan?
In utero, correct. Okay, so it's just an important factor, and I'm sure you're going to share a ton of resources. But the more I've read about it, it really describes and talks about that. And it's so interesting because a lot of the children that they're like, oh, it's not a drug baby because blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but the amount of stress that the mom is going through, that's all real. These things play in a role. And it was very eye-opening, very eye-opening.
And again, you're kind of fast forwarding to where we want to go post like my narrative. There's nothing that happens to a baby in utero that doesn't have a lifelong effect. Like that's true for us. It's true for the kids that are my biological kids. Like one of them had a lot of medical complications early in life. That's not like we didn't make bad decisions. Like this is a medical issue and we had to address it. But that like very early life experiences where doctors are poking you and you feel uncomfortable every day, those things, they affect you long term. Right. Again, all stuff that can be redeemed and we believe that's possible, but also things that need to be redeemed. And so it's not just like, is biomom on drugs or, are they getting enough sleep? Those are obviously factors, but it's also, like you said, stressful situations. Those stress hormones can transfer through the uterine wall and affect the way a baby's brain develops. And those things carry with us. And that's a good thing to be aware of, both when we're thinking about taking care of biomom and also when we're thinking about how to raise these kids who are coming from more challenging situations.
When have you experienced or seen from either your folks like that have had conversations with you, gone through training, whatever? Usually when is that mom reaching out? Like, is she already, the very beginning, 3 months, just found out, 8 months, or in the hospital? Like when have you seen an average? Is it all over the place, or is it just a certain, they're like 6 months in is usually what I've seen. Now they're having that decision because it's real, or I'm just curious.
It is as varied as like the individual moms are because it's their choice. And so sometimes it's like sometimes domestic private adoptions happen like when a baby is born. And like, this is a moment of realization for mom. Sometimes, just real talk, sometimes the adoption isn't final until like, I think there's like a 48 hours post-birth where a mom has the right to say, I've made a mistake.
Oh yeah.
Because kids belong in their biological families. As hard as it is to hear that, if you really want a child in your family, that's both true and right. That kids belong with their biological families. And so, sometimes you might have a mom who committed when they found they were pregnant, but 48 hours in, they still have the right. To be clear, once a parent, in any of these scenarios, once a parent signs over parental rights, that's no longer true. And so once adoption is finalized, there's no way that a bio parent can like take their kid back.
Right.
But there is a window in domestic private legally where mom is allowed to, because again, that is a good and holy thing, as challenging as it is for both sides of that.
And I've heard stories where people have put money up front
100%
and lost it.
Real thing.
Gone.
And so again, there's a question of, if you've done this, God bless you, that's a hard road. And I don't think we have time for this, but some people come into this adoption conversation because of the inability to have bio kids. And there's a whole nother layer of complication and hurt and difficulty in those conversations.
Yes.
And so I would say if you're listening to this and that's your situation where you know you want to be a parent and biologically that's just not a possibility for you right now, you got to talk to somebody. Like, you got to get real counseling and you got to deal with that as it is. And then you'll be able to have a kind of a more healthy and holistic view of what's next. Because if you know you want to be a parent and you're kind of struggling with the loss and grief of not being able to do it biologically, then these kind of complicated conversations are going to be like doubly and triply complicated because all of these hopes and dreams you have tied up into them.
Sure.
And that's real stuff.
My friend Fran, who came on, who's the one that walked across the states and now he's over at Third Planet, his wife actually was a guidance counselor for a while, and then they had a kiddo. And so she actually has her own podcast, believe it or not. They're a mini podcast. And it's based around the Catholic side. That's the religious side. But losing children, right, from the Catholic perspective, which is very interesting. It's very unique, very true. So shout out to her, and I'll get the information and maybe post it somewhere so people can. But I wanted her to like come on, and also my wife's experience for exactly what you're just talking about now is that, you know, and that's one of I forgot what it's called. It's like a day too, and this is terrible. I should know this. It's like silver ribbon. So there's something.
Yeah, I don't know the day, but I know what you mean.
Yes, it comes up because it happens, and people are just not familiar. And which blows my mind because I mean we experienced it, 7 times or whatever, right? Like so we were very well versed. And the first time never, like, that hurts the most, like, and it never gets easier after that. But 100% different conversation, and I think you should have not closure, but a sense and understanding prior, right? Like I think that's a combination of conversation, like you said. I think that's really important.
Yeah. I didn't know that about your story. I'm sorry, dude. That's
no. I mean, that was like, we tried, and then we had loss, and then I was overseas, and then she had to have surgeries. Yeah. One, she had to have a fallopian tube removed when I was gone, and so it was a whole, man, it was a roller coaster ride. It's crazy. That's
a lot to go through.
It was.
And it's not different than thinking about making any life change when you're in the middle of grief, or, like, you don't want to go find a new job 2 weeks after your parents have passed away. Like, you've got to deal with this really hard thing in order to think about this next really hard thing well. And I think that's true in this case as well, because again, I'm trying to not undersell the complication here.
Yeah.
It's all very complicated.
Yeah.
So domestic private, bio mom is making choices until rights are signed over. And then that's that. And then you as an adoptive parent are making the rest of the choices. We made the book. We're like, hey, we're the great family. Look how cute we are. This is what we're into. We didn't get a match, but we put our book with an agency, and then my wife got pregnant.
Happens all the time. I love that.
It is
happens all the time.
It is such a common story. Like, we know. Listen, like, I know I'm a pastor. I know how pregnancy works, but here we are. And so we just put the process on pause. We're like, hey, hold our book, agency, because like, we got a baby here.
Yes.
And our second baby had a lot of medical complication early in life. And she's beautiful and like she's doing great now. She's a 7th grader. We love her so much. But really challenging and mysterious medical issues. Like, we didn't know what was going on. We're sleeping in the couch every day. Oh. She's got reflux issues. She's got all sorts of stuff. But she's doing super well now. But because of that, like, we're like, there's no way that we can make another really difficult decision about our family. We got to figure this one out first. And so we put the process on hold. And once again, maybe 18 months later, we have a diagnosis for our daughter. 22q is a genetic condition. It's also called DeGeorge. And so if you're familiar, it's really rare. You're not familiar.
Well, it's ironic. I may have heard that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. But right? Courtney Medical, like, she talks about all kind of stuff. So it sounds semi-familiar, believe it or not.
Well, I was just shouting it out because it's so rare that if somebody knows it, hit me up. We can talk 22q stuff.
There you go.
Our kid's doing super well. We got some places we like that are giving good care. So that put us on pause, trying to figure that out, maybe 18 months until we got a little bit of resolution on that. And she's doing a little better at that 18-month point. And again, same weird feeling for me, who's not like a feelings-led person. When it was time to start the process again, we just didn't feel like domestic private was the right fit for us. And we had a little bit of clarity on why. I don't really want to go into it because I don't want to like yuck somebody's yum.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's like, do your process. It's a beautiful thing. And if it's a good fit for you, it's a good fit. One more thing about domestic private, a lot of time, there's 2 ways it happens. Through an agency, like how we were describing, but also this is how person-to-person adoption works. When your third cousin needs a place for a new home for their kid.
That's what I was going to ask you about family.
Or like, I'm working with the person. Like, we have friends who they had an employee they were working with who got pregnant unexpectedly, and that person knew they wanted to have their baby adopted. And so domestic private is also this person-to-person with a lawyer situation. And some folks who are pursuing domestic private, literally, the first step is telling people that you're interested in adoption, because, you know, you get in people's networks and, oh, actually I have a person I know who's pregnant and they don't know what to do, and they might actually be thinking about this.
Right.
So it's either through an agency where you're partnering with strangers, or it's person-to-person, where you are familiar with the situation, but you want to make a permanent change. A little bit different than like living with your aunt or your cousin, which is essentially informal foster care.
Right.
Also beautiful. All these things are beautiful.
Yes.
And all of them are redemptive, and they're all different.
And they're all messy.
And they're all messy.
But in the best way, right? Because some of the best paintings are just splatter art, right? Like, I mean, you know, again, horrible analogies. I'm terrible at this. But like, I find that, and this is, again, right, Tyler, why I wanted you to come on and have the conversation, is you get such like varying, there's nothing in the middle. And I think we're both, you know, from the experience, it is in the middle. It is not like a horrific thing, don't do it. And it's not a like, hey, it's all roses and you know, rainbows, right? It's an in the middle thing, right? It is beautiful and messy. And I'm glad you brought that up at the very beginning, because I think that's imperative. And it's never to deter people away. It's to bring awareness.
That's it.
It's to bring awareness, to be informed.
Yeah. And like we say, clarity is kind. Like, you call a thing what it is because you want to know like how it really works. And if all you've ever heard is horror stories, they're not true, but they're not the whole story.
Right.
And if all you've ever imagined is like, you know, the cartoon version where the stork drops off a baby and the baby's so happy and everything's great, there's a lot of that, but there's more to it.
Right. Right.
Sorry.
No
Save you the edit. So, we came to a point where it was clear domestic private was not the road we were going to take, and then we were stuck. And then here's where you get to, listen, y'all, I was a foster parent. I was first of all, we didn't know anything about foster care, what it is, how it works. The only thing we knew is it's the one we weren't going to do. There's 3 options. One of them for us was not an option. It's the one that we did. And so, a second dead end, we knew that domestic private wasn't a good fit for us. And I was at this point unwilling to like look foster care in the face, because all I knew about it was like the difficulty of it and the horror stories and, you know, Little Orphan Annie and all that stuff or whatever. You go to a million homes and they're all terrible. And that for me was like, I didn't feel equipped to get in that world. Like, I wanted a fresh start. This is a very naive way to think of it, which I know now. I want a fresh start, like a brand new baby who I could just raise as my baby, and like the adoption won't even be part of their story, which is absolutely not how it works, regardless of which road you take. Like, this is part of the story no matter what.
That's true.
But I was so scared of that at that time that I wasn't open to the idea of foster care. And then I say there's 2 times I've heard like directly like a call from God, this call to ministry, and then this innate sense that adoption is part of my story. Leslie has a moment where we're both in a church service, like in a worship service, and like, you know, we're spiritual connection and there's songs, and we're like trying to, you know, like pay attention to what the Lord's doing in the room or whatever. And we say like, listen to the Holy Spirit, which is like, it's a little bit of a mix between like intuition and like, is there some outside sense of the thing God wants to tell me?
Right.
We're just trying to do all that in church.
Right.
We're standing next to each other. Like, our shoulders are touching. Right. And she hears clearly and concisely like, hey, foster care is the way to go. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how the voice of God works, but like, why couldn't the beam be just a little bit wider? Because I didn't hear it, you know, like she goes home and she's like, listen, I had this profound moment in a worship service, and I know that foster care is the way that not only that we're supposed to go, but also for us, like, this is a thing God is calling us to. And I'm like, well, why didn't God call me? I was right there. I was in the room.
Literally touching.
Yeah.
Yes.
Come on. And she asked me, my wife is very wise. She said, listen, you don't have to say yes, because this is, if you're in this conversation, like, you have to have 2 yeses to move forward. A yes and a no is a no. And she's like, don't just say yes, but like, I want you to be open to the idea for a week. Like, go from a hard no, which is where I lived, to like a what if? And I did that, and pretty quickly, give me like 3 days, and I'm like, like, I'm wrong about this. Leslie's right. This is in fact the way we're supposed to go.
Wow.
And I'm like, grow up in the deep South. I'm like evangelical culture. I'm a pig-headed man. And it was hard enough to realize that I had to make a change in direction. Like I was wrong on this issue and Leslie was correct. I also had to recognize like my stubbornness to look at the thing put me like in a place where I had to say, oh, I was wholly wrong here. Like not only did Leslie find the way forward, but also like I missed it. This is how repentance works in the church. Is like, oh, there's the thing. I got it wrung. Oh, that's like humility doesn't come easy to me.
You had the big cup of swallowing the ego and like
yes, all that. And again, it comes from this bone deep calling. We knew adoption would be part of our story. We were out of other options. She got a clear sense. And then she just said, hey, stop being an idiot. Like, think about this for a minute. And as soon as I did, I'm like, I have to go tell my wife she was right. And that this is the right way forward for us. And also, I'm terrified. Like,
oh, yeah.
Just because I knew it was right did not mean I felt equipped. In fact, I was like, what are we're doing this. What are we doing? Like, how is this going to work? And so we started the foster care process, which is, okay, for clarity's sake, if you don't know anything about foster care, there's 3 ways to adopt. You got your international, which we talked about, use an agency, look at Hague accredited countries, do your homework on culture and making space for culture. You got domestic private, which is either through strangers, through an agency, or it's person to person through a lawyer. And then number 3 is foster care. The difference, the thing that makes foster care, adoption to foster care, different than domestic private is that in a foster care situation, a biological mother has not made a choice. The state has made a choice to remove a kid from a biological mother. Sometimes a biological father, but like, let's be real, dads have wholly failed. Like, dads are not usually in the conversation when we're talking about foster care. That's a wide brush, but it's...
I've seen it. Like when you have to sit in the court case and like it's 20 of them and you're sitting there waiting and they're all coming up before you. 85 to 90%. In fact, some of that 10 to 15% are coming in prison uniforms.
Yeah,
and
that's
like, it. So that's you're right on with that, just from literally proven data.
Yeah,
like,
and I don't want to be callous. Like, there's a lot. We dovetail with issues of poverty. Like a lot of my work as a missions pastor is in the world of poverty. I'm not here to just like shame bio parents or absent dads. There's a lot to it, and there's a lot to addiction and generational trauma,
right,
and poverty, but also like dads. There's no dads,
right?
And so. Why am I talking about dads?
No. So we were talking about to going the other path. So
the third
path. Yeah.
So in foster care, a biological mom has not made a choice, but the state has made a choice, saying like, this home is not a safe environment for a kid. And to be perfectly clear, if you're in this conversation we're having because you're interested in adoption, foster care is not designed to end in adoption. Foster care is designed to end in reunification, where a removal happens in order to create safety for a kid. And while the kid is in a safe environment, a foster care environment, the state's doing all they can to resource a bio parent to fix whatever the presenting issue was that was creating this unsafe environment. So we're talking about sometimes it's parenting classes, it's working on addiction issues. Sometimes it's just poverty issues. Like, let's find a home that's stable and a roof over your head.
Right.
Can we get you in public housing? Can we talk about job training or child care? And so the state's trying to do everything they can to create a safe environment so they can reunify, which is part of the heartbreak. If you step into foster care for adoption, you have to know you're in a world that isn't designed to create adoptions.
Right.
It does create adoptions.
Right.
But it's designed to bring healing and redemption to biological families. And if you know a lot about like the state and how it all works, it works sometimes and it doesn't. Like, listen, we're talking about, can we fix generational issues in a 3-month period with a caseworker who has 50 people that they're trying to take care of?
I think we could have a 3-hour conversation about how the state works.
We could.
Or doesn't. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah. And so, but if you remove the cynicism from it and just imagine that what the state wants is a biological kid to be raised in their family of origin, that is a good thing.
Right.
How to get it done is infinitely complex, and why it wasn't happening, infinitely complex. But the state wants reunification. And if the state can't get reunification, their second level is to find another biological family person who can raise the kids.
That's right.
Grandmas, aunties, cousins. You got siblings somewhere who are older. Is there any way we can keep you near your family of origin? Because again, like this is how we're designed is to be raised in these families. And so the state works hard to make sure that a kid, if they've been removed from a biological family and they can't go back for whatever reason, that they can still have a connection with them.
Right.
And so the state is not looking at me, a stranger, and saying, okay, mom can't do it, you do it. The state's looking around and saying, is there a grandma? Is there an auntie? Is there an older sibling? Is there someplace, somewhere else in the state or anywhere else where this kid might retain these biological ties? And the state will prioritize that for reasons that I think are great. Like, does it play out in a great way? No, because this is the messiest of all possible systems because it's an unwanted intervention for the sake of safety. Like that is messy.
Right.
But if neither of those things work out, if reunification doesn't work out, and if finding another home that has a biological tie doesn't work out, the state looks to foster parents or sometimes domestic private as well to make essentially what you call like a stranger to stranger adoption. And so that's how eventually our family got to look the way that it looks. So real long story short, we went through licensing process. The state does all they can to train you. They do their best. They can't prepare you. Like part of this conversation we're having is just trying to tell you there's a whole world of resources that can move you in a direction towards lifelong preparation, but there's no switch you turn on and know how to raise someone else's kid who's come from a traumatic situation.
Right.
Like it's going to be messy and you have what it takes because like this is how we're designed. But it's going to cost some work.
Right.
And for me, a tremendous amount of personal work in order to do this well, which I was not expecting because I'm a good dad. You know what I'm saying? Like if I can be a good dad to these two biological kids, why can't I just copy paste?
Oh man.
I can just tell you can't.
Yeah.
Like the tools that I had became wholly ineffective in this new context. And again, like that's where I have to be humble and say, I can either double down on my tools and be not an effective father for these kids coming from different places, or I can, rearrange my tools and find out how to do this new thing well, which is exactly what I had to do, which is how I got in this world of trauma-informed care and the training. And
yeah, Tyler, we'll talk about it later. The biggest eye-opening and this is how I met Tyler, it was through some training and some other instances, I think, too. But the flipped triangle. So we'll talk about that later. But don't let us forget to talk about that. That was probably the biggest eye opener and the most questions I had during the training.
Yeah, and you see that if you're coming. We'll get to the flipped triangle, but essentially, here's a good way to think about how I had to change. Every tool that I had learned from my family, which was healthy for a while and then not healthy, and like what I intuited from like how my dad is and my granddad and all that. And also like what I learned just growing up in the deep South. And I'm like a Gen X white kid, like all these things are building my view of parenting. And so I come in and like, I think not, this is how I parent, but this is how parenting works. I lack that self-awareness to say all these things have informed my view of parenting. My faith, my evangelical culture, all these things have told me parenting works in X way. And it was, in all humility, it was effective for my two biological kids. Like it was going well. And I was feeling super good about like how dad I was, I'm feeling great. I got a blog. Like, I'm talking about it.
I'm like, do you have like the coffee mug and the shirt? Like number one, world's best dad.
I'm like, this is no joke. I still do this. So don't fault me. I want to take the kids to the store. So like kids see, like I want to be seen. Like, I know that dad, he got the kids at Walmart. That guy must be something. Because the societal expectation for a dad is so low. You just show up and they're like, oh,
wow.
Can't believe dad came to the school play. Wow. Doesn't dad have a job?
I literally do it for opposite reason. It's an excuse for my body now. They're like, oh man, post-retirement. I'm like, yeah, but I'm a dad. So I have the dad bod. I had to have it. I can't just go around with this athletic, muscular body anymore. I have to have the dad bod to match all the children. That's
perfect excuse. Yeah. Thank you for society for explaining our body type. If you're watching the video, we look about the same. That's right. It's because we're dads.
That's right.
And so, yeah, I felt great. But what I learned was after we go through the classes and we start getting placements, all my intuitive tools that were handed to me from the culture and just the way that I built my understanding of fatherhood, it wasn't bad. It was actually working for me until I started getting kids in my house that are coming from these very different backgrounds and traumatic situations. And just, it's not apples and apples. And I didn't know that until they're in my house. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you guys, it's dinner time. Why don't you sit down? And that didn't work. I'm like, y'all sit down. And like, that didn't work. I'm like, sit down and go to timeout. A timeout for a minute. Timeout for an hour. Timeout for your whole life. Go to your room. You're in your room for life. Like, you just keep leveling up. And it's like, all of a sudden you're like, I'm an idiot. The things I'm saying are silly, and nothing in front of me, nothing good is happening. And so I have enough humility. I guess the situation brought enough humility to me to say, I need something different. And so get back to the story. We get licensed. We get a couple placements, just a few, young kids.
How painful was the licensing portion? As far as like, did you attend was it like the same course? I think it's like 8 hours.
It's changed a bunch.
3 hours, 5 or 6 days or something like that kind of thing. Or
it sort of depends. For a listener's sake, it depends on where they are.
Okay.
The state has to train you, but the way that looks is like very, very, very different. We did like 8 weeks of 2-hour classes, something like that. Yep. And for me, I liked the knowledge of it. Like, again, I'm a heady, like I function from my head. And so, hearing all this information, everything was shocking. Like, oh shoot, the state doesn't want me to raise these kids. Why? I'm here to raise these kids. So every single class was a revelation, and every single class is like disappointing in some ways and exciting in some ways. And you're just learning this process you've never known. I'm not a social worker, I'm a pastor or whatever. I'm a youth pastor. And so, but I did appreciate it. Like, I appreciated this huge, like, passing of information. For some people, it's unbelievably frustrating. Some people, like, it's the bar that causes them to say, this isn't right.
That's what I was going to ask you. So, one of the more eye-opening things that I heard, and I could see someone getting deterred, was like they threw out a number, and it was something along the lines of like 80% of children in care, state care, have had either some kind of psychotropic drug, like, whether that was medically prescribed or inadvertently or something along those lines, and or been abused, sexually abused and or physically abused. Yeah. And you're like, wow. So not only, like you said, am I taking into consideration the culture, coming from a different family origin, just in general, like whether that's international or national, potentially religious, depending on how old they are. Now I'm like, holy cow, they're on some kind of medication that's actually chemically affecting their brain. Yeah. And they went along the lines of talking about how there was some mixed diagnosis where they were trying to play with the milligrams of the respective drug, and how that was like really messing with the child's mind, and how like parents were forgetting, and that drop can actually really truly affect the children. And so like, and you're hearing about these horror stories, like holy cow, right? Yeah. Like that was a huge eye opener. So while there's, like you said, a lot of the state information about how they try to reintegrate, it was interesting to hear about the child's psychological, mental, and sort of that physical health.
Yeah. No, I want to jump in on that too, because, well, first of all, you hear all sorts of stories about kids in foster care. Like they're burning down the house, they're breaking the TV, they're, juvenile delinquents, they're in jail. The pipeline from foster care to jail is like a real thing. I want to say clearly, like, a kid does not get in foster care by any fault of their own. Like, I don't want to shame parents, but like, it is a parent's fault. Like that, the responsibility for raising a kid is not on a kid. Regardless, that kid's 15, 16, I don't care. Like, that's a child. And so it's foolish to not recognize there are some very, very challenging behaviors and very, very challenging backgrounds. But I'd say like a mindset shift that's required is to say, like, I'm here for a kid who is in a situation from no fault of their own. They did not choose the biological family that they grew up in. They didn't choose drug exposure. They didn't choose abuse. They didn't choose abandonment. They didn't choose neglect. And they might be reacting to all those things. And the way they're reacting is unbelievably challenging. And we know, we're dads. Like, we know it's counterproductive for them. But we also, as dads, have to be the adult in the situation and say, this is still a child. And now my job is to take this child who has more forming to be done and more redemption, and to help bring that. It's unfair to say, like, that a kid from a difficult situation, it's unfair to place the burden of their situation on them, because they were placed there. Like, it's not a decision they made.
Right.
And so that's where, like, this is justice talk. Like, this pushes my buttons. Like, somebody's got to be the adult. That's us. It's not them. And so that's why we have to grow in our understanding. And that's why we step up to the plate. And now I'm a preacher. That's why we step up to the plate and do this thing, because it's on us to protect these kids, right? And even though that's an incredibly challenging call, if it's not us, it's who's it going to be?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, you hear all this in class, and they're going to tell you like, well, if a kid is causing physical destruction, here's who you call. And if you need a Baker Act, here's who you call. And you're like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I have to be an expert in all of these. Like, how does police work? How all these medical interventions work? How does daycare work? How does Medicare work? Or, like things I had no context for. I have to start becoming an expert in all of those, because that's about to be the world I live in. But again, that's the call for me to pick up that and run with it, because I'm saying that we're taking responsibility for these kids that aren't ours, because somebody has to, and they're beautiful and they're wonderful. And like, there is redemption to be had if somebody can clear a path. Right. And so, yeah, the classes are terrifying.
I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, you have to, it's both, it's all sides, right? You have to go, hey, like here, again, to me, being aware and being informed and understanding the resources out there and the education that I might have to do, right? So while I am going to have the joy and the bond and love, I do, like you just said earlier, I have to step up to the plate and take some time and really, inform myself. Okay, if there's these circumstances and I'm not equipped, how do I better either equip myself internally from a reading perspective or externally through either courses or outside help? Like that's the responsibility of the adult, like you just said, becoming the adult in the situation.
Yeah, like you served in the military. Like they're telling you before you sign up, they're going to shoot guns at you. Like, we're going to put you in a situation where people want to kill you. You can either say, no, thank you. That's what I said. I didn't serve. Or you can do what you did. Say, okay, that's a hard thing and it's an important thing, and I'm going to learn how to do it well. And they're going to put me in a situation that is broken by every account. Like, military doesn't intervene in beautiful situations. They're going to put me in a situation that's broken, and I'm going to do everything that I know, and I'm going to learn how to do it the best way possible, because it's a good and holy thing to do. Right. It's the same sort of call where it's like, no kid is in a conversation about foster care for a good reason. It's always the conversation exists only for broken reasons. Right. And so we step in and say, here I am. I'm starting from a place of brokenness. What is it going to require of me to move myself and this family forward into a place that looks beautiful and redemptive? And
how much longer was it post getting licensed and going through that training before you actually got placed with a child?
That's a great question. So this is another thing. If you know nothing, in the foster care world, a kid is never brought to your front door without your explicit permission. And so what happens after licensing is a bunch of phone calls. 2 a.m. Hey, the cops are at a kid's house. We don't even know what's next for this kid, but they need a bed tonight. Are you that bed? And you can say, well, how old's the kid? And what do you know? And are there siblings? And you make a decision right there on the spot. Like, they woke you up, you're trying to use your logic. It's 3 a.m. And you're like, I don't. And so we said no a bunch of times because we felt ready, but it's terrifying. And so we're like, no. Maybe 4 weeks of like no to every call. And finally a call came that it was like a short-term placement. They think there's a biological family member close that's going to say yes. I'm like, this is the right first step. Yes to this. It was like 5 days. It was a set of girls. They were like 7 and 9 years old. And we knew it was temporary. And we're like, this is the right way for us to get our feet wet. And so we said yes to that. So it could be the next day, but it could be, a year. It's really up to you as the licensed parent. When is the right fit to say yes, according to the very limited information you have. So it could be instant and it could be 8 months, but it starts when you say, yeah, I'll take that placement. And that placement might be a week. It might be a year. It might be 2 years. It's almost never more than 2 years because permanency is a goal of the state. It's supposed to legally be 1 year, but it's not. It can be complicated. And so we said yes to a placement. Then we got a little baby just after that. If you're in foster care to adopt a baby, it's probably not going to happen because babies are easier to place with biological families. It's not a 15-year-old who they know has had a lot of challenging behaviors. It's a beautiful, sweet little quiet baby. So Tyler,
one of the questions I have, and this was like from our determination and now, right, looking back, like, in retrospect. So you, and there might be, depending on the percentage, you already had 2 biological children. Right. what was the consideration on taking in these children that you don't know their past at 3 a.m. that come in and you don't know if they're going to be violent or have all these other things going on? Like, how did y'all come to the decision and take that in consideration when you did make the decision of like, yes, we will foster?
Yeah. If you're going to say yes to foster parenting, I think it has to on some level be a sense of calling. You have to know this is a thing you're supposed to do. It's not a thing you can do casually. It's just not going to work that way. And so that's where we started, is like, if we knew we're going to do this thing, well, then we felt like we could figure the rest out. And so we had two biological kids. We had said one arbitrary rule we made that I found helpful was like, we're not going to take a kid who's older than our oldest. There you go. Because we don't know how to do that yet.
Right. And
so we were trying to keep them in the range of the kids we already had. And because our kids were young, that also kept like the parenting level a little lower, because a challenging behavior from a 5-year-old is incredibly challenging, but it's very different than a challenging behavior from a 15-year-old.
Sure.
And so that was a boundary we made because we're just trying to adapt to what we felt equipped for. But again, that's wholly the decision of the foster parent. Like, a lot of foster parents come in this is like a second round. Like, my kids have moved out of the house. Yep. I know how to raise. Give me all the teens. I raised teens. Like, I've been yelled at. I've seen kids run out of the house. But ultimately, what the parameters are up to the foster parent, right? And that's a decision. If you're doing this alone, people do this alone. It's possible. If you're doing it alone, you have to think for yourself, what am I capable of? If you're doing it with a spouse or whoever you're living with, you just have to decide, like, what do we feel capable of? And that's what we might say yes to. And when your willingness and capacity lines up with the parameters of a call you get, that's when you say yes.
So when you said you had the short temporary, out of curiosity, one of the things that popped in my head, and when you said also, for the folks that are single at the time, and maybe they're just choosing single period or whatever, but what about the schooling system? So that's, I didn't even really it's never really popped in my mind in consideration. It could be 5 days, it could be 2 weeks. And maybe they're, in a different, of course, more than likely, maybe a different school. They've had to travel. Did y'all run into that experience at all? And how did you approach that?
We did not. And that depends again on where physically, geographically, where you are. The state always makes a priority of trying to keep as many systems in place that this kid has. Like, can we keep them in the same daycare? Can we keep them in the same school? If they have to move daycares or schools, that is a challenge that the state couldn't find a solution to. They tried to find a solution. And so we had cases where we were driving 40 minutes to bring a kid to the daycare, but it's because we knew that it was a temporary placement and it was healthier for that kid.
Right.
We're a temporary relationship. That's a more permanent one. And so we can inconvenience ourselves to keep that.
Try to keep as many things that are similar in that structure as possible.
And again, like, we're the big people and we do the harder things in order to help it be more healthy and possible for the kids we're caring for. But the state does start with trying to keep systems intact. They call biological family before they called you anyway, because again, like, auntie probably lives close, or auntie's going to keep those connections. After that, they're still trying to keep things local because of all those things you mentioned. Yeah, systems and daycares and doctors.
So you had, I think you said 7 and 9.
Yeah, and then a little baby, beautiful little sweet baby, and everybody knew we were in this for adoption. Everyone was so disappointed when that baby got placed with an auntie, because it is what it is, man. Yeah. And we gave as good of care as we could possibly give to those kids while we could give them. And in the foster care system, that is as far as our control goes. And so if you're happy or willing to say, like, I will do everything I can for the time that I've been allotted, that outside of that single sentence, you have no control. You don't know what time is allotted. You don't know what's next for a kid. You don't know if they're going to be in your home forever or somebody else's home, or if they're going back. But if you can say in good conscience, like, I feel good about giving a kid everything that I can give them for whatever time I can have them. Well, like, that's as far as you can go. And after that, everything, we're playing jazz. We're figuring it out.
So how, it's interesting. So my best friend, Ronnie, in Texas has done it multiple times, and his wife, and I've heard stories, right? You come in, some kids, again, broken arm, broken leg, 18 months. I mean, some just, having certain things. But how did you find yourself? Because I think maybe your wife probably maybe a little bit different from, like, sort of compartmentalizing that, right? So, because that's a big statement, and that's what I asked them. I said, I don't know if I could do it. Like, it would break my heart every time that kid would leave. Like, how do you do that? Because, like, my wife, she's very good at compartmentalizing, maybe not great overall mental health, but how do you do that? Like, how did y'all find yourself, like like living that. You can say it all day long, but when you have that kid and you're hugging and you're changing diapers or whatever else, and then having to give that child back outside of your care, like how did you do it, and how long did it really take before you accepted that?
Yeah. I couldn't do it because I would get too connected to the kids is the most common thing. Like once you become a foster parent, you also become like a banner waver, like a flag bearer, and everyone who's ever thought about it will just, my family is now huge. I haven't said this yet. We got 6 kids. And so people just, we're in a small town. Like people just see us. We drive this big dumb car and
hey, it's not dumb. I have one too.
Just because you have it. Like, you know, it's not a sexy car. Shout out to the Ford Transit drivers.
They're amazing.
It's a very functional vehicle.
Yes.
And so you become like this shining, like a beacon. And if anybody's ever thought of it, they're going to come hit you up. And the most common thing is like this thing that you said, like, oh man, I would feel too connected. I couldn't give a kid back. And here's again, I'm a preacher. I can't help it. Like, to me, that statement is coming from a person who should be doing this thing, because you have to connect. Like that's how healing comes, through connection. You don't want to be a foster parent if you think like, I won't connect with these kids, it'll be very easy for me. Like that's not it.
That's nice. I like how you turn that. Yeah, that's great.
So I would feel too connected. Well, I'm sorry, because you said this personally. This is now directly to the third party who said it, not you.
It's okay. It's okay.
If that's where you're coming from, I would feel too connected. It would hurt me too much. Well, put your big pants on and get hurt, because like we're doing this for the sake of a child who needs connection. And if you're the kind of person who builds connection, you're the right kind of person. And like you might need to take a break. Like if you have a placement that goes a year and then doesn't become permanent and you expect it to be permanent, maybe you shouldn't take a next placement, but you should be able to look back and say like, for that time, I gave that kid everything I had and it hurts me, and I can accept that hurt because the connection I made is going to bring healing to that kid. And I might not ever see it because that kid's now off somewhere else. And so I don't want to deny the pain of kids not being permanent. I think what I'm trying to say is, we as parents who are considering foster parents, shouldering that pain for the sake of a kid is part of the deal. Right. And if you're good at connecting and you're going to feel that pain, it's a reason to do it, right? Not to not do it.
And I think that's important, Tyler. So I always, sometimes I sit and I bring my personal experience, and then sometimes I try to bring what I've heard or other people too. So trying to talk or ask the questions from their shoes, but 100%. A worry that I think or a phrase or phraseology that a lot of folks in that position use. So I think that's a phenomenal answer and perspective to look at, is if you do have that feeling, you are the right person. Like, I mean, that's great to hear. Like that's a very important thing that I think that most people that are even considering this, fostering and or adopting, need to hear. So I really do appreciate you bringing that to the table. So now that you've done, I'm assuming just a numerous amount of adoptions at this point. Like, there's a period of time. What was that next? Like, how did you finally get to the point of actually adopting? Or did you say, like, did you have the conversation with your wife and you're like, hey, let's just keep fostering, and then it worked out? I'm just very curious about that.
Yeah, we were in fostering to adopt. That was always our goal. Again, for clarity's sake, not the state's goal, but that was always what we wanted to do. And so we were basically going to do this until the right fit came about and became permanent. And that's how it worked for us. We said yes and said yes and said yes until the right fit came about. And we had a pair of brothers come, and they stayed with us for about maybe 9 or 10 months before it became clear that permanency was going to be part of conversation. And then maybe another for them 4 or 5 months before permanency actually happened. So over a year time before these boys who came into our house became permanently part of our families. But it did happen. And so at that point, we stopped saying yes to temporary placements, because now we have to readjust. Right. And now, like, it's not temporary anymore. Now we're making it a thing, and that sort of changes your approach a little bit. And so we said yes to these boys. They're great. They're beautiful. They're still my boys. Like forever, they're my boys, and we love them so much. Like, they're the best, man. Instant twins, right? Because they were the same age as our biological kids.
Oh, great.
Everybody thinks like we're Catholic or we're Mormon or something, because in foster care, you never know. Our kids happen to all look like each other, and they all happen to look like me. If we lined them up, you would have no idea who's who. And that's not always the case, but so when we go out, it's like, it's very confusing to people. Like, And I'm like, oh yeah, we got 2 ninth graders, we got 2 7th graders, we got a first grader, and we got a 3rd grader. And everyone's like, what? 2 sets of twins? I mean, no. And so the boys came, they became permanent. And then for us, we stopped saying yes to permanent placements, or to temporary placements, and we thought we were done. This is a very common foster care story. But I was done. There's 2 more instances where my wife was right, and she said be open to it, and I had to change my mind. 2 more of those where I had to be humble. It's the worst, man. Like, I've grown, but the way that we went from 2 adopted kids through the foster care system to 4 adopted kids through the foster care system was that all of our adopted kids are biological siblings to each other. So we had the boys, they became permanent. Then a mom had a girl, and she came along. And again, the state wants to keep these biological families together. They call us, and we're like, yeah. And then the same thing with our next girl. And so that brings us from 2 to 4 to add one. And now we're at 6 kids. And I would say this too, this is again, preacher talk. You put a preacher on, you're going to preach. It's true for biological kids, but it's also true for foster and adoptive families. You think, like, when you're a single person, you're like, do I have enough to give to another human being? Can I be married? Like, I'm selfish. I'm a young man. I want to do what I want to do. Do I have enough to give to a spouse? Well, it turns out when you make a lifelong commitment to another person, your capacity to love increases. Like, no, you probably don't have enough to give when you're a single person. You gain enough to give, because of these connections. And then you're like, okay, we love having this young single life. We're a young married life. We're going to Hawaii, having a good time. We got a little bit of money because we both got jobs. Do we have enough to give a kid? Yeah, maybe. But all of a sudden, when you have a kid, like, your capacity to love and to connect increases. And that's been the story for us. Like, can any person have a bunch of kids? Yeah. Because as your family grows, however your family grows, your capacity for connection and love also grows. It's challenging. But like, guess what? Like, when I had 2 biological kids, I was wore out and I was tired, and it was really, really hard. Then when I had 2 biological and 2 adopted, I was tired all the time. And now I got 6, and like, guess what? I'm tired all the time.
It's so funny. I remember that was the conversation, Tyler, when we were getting close, and I called you, and I'm like, man, how do you ensure that you have enough love to share across the board? Because you don't want to take away from your oldest or the middle, or like, how do you do that? And it's almost like, not only do you get that additional connection, they just come with an extra bank of like, here's your capacity. And so like, you go, okay, cool. And now you get to fill that up. It's like a little container. It's funny. The first thing I think of is like Monsters Inc., where they have the laughing container. And it's like every child comes with this additional container of patience, because you need to fill that up more, because goodness gracious, if you try to just maintain your certain patience, that's never going to happen with that ability. But just that love to share across the board and with those connections, and the dynamic sense of the group as a family, and how that changes. And I mean, holy cow, because, and this is the part too that's interesting, is depending on the age, sometimes it's not even across the board. Sometimes the younger kids, you do have to put in 1 more patience, 2 more connections and love, because they need it at that time. Yep. And hopefully you have enough communication so you can communicate with the older kiddos and be like, hey, listen, like, I have to take, this kid can't do this by themselves. I have to do this for them right now. At some point, maybe not, but I have found, just personally, I try my hardest, at least with my oldest, like, we'll try to go do one-on-one every once in a while, just to establish, like, hey, don't forget, right? Like, you're there, we're good. But please understand that, right? Like, and I think at least our oldest is aware, and she's, by the way, extremely helpful. Oh my goodness gracious. What was I listening to or reading? And they said, one of the keys is, not take advantage, but hopefully your oldest child understands and they have that enough connection and love, and they can help out, right? Because like, when you have a big family and your kids are not helping out, you're going to struggle. You're going to have a very hard time as an adult. An extremely hard time as an adult. But I like I said, I think that's great. I'm glad to hear that's your capacity grows with each child. Hopefully you have enough bedroom and space to go along with that.
Did our house grow? Yeah, I guess our house grew as well. Our car definitely grew.
That's right.
Yeah, and I would say too, you said something that's a little sidebar worth mentioning. To the extent that the kids in our house had the capacity to understand, we did keep them in the conversation. So like, did my 4-year-old and 2-year-old bio kids really know what we were saying yes to? No, but we did have conversation, and they did everything that they could understand, we had laid out for them. And that's been true all along. And regardless of whether your kids are bio or not, if you're talking about making changes to the family, it's definitely worth letting the kids in to the extent that they're able to understand it and comprehend.
100%. Yeah, I think that's great. So you told me that you had the two, you were done, keep open a possibility. What was the time frame when they called you and said, hey, the mom had another kid, before you had to make that decision of like, yes, we'll go ahead and accept them? Was it right from the hospital, or was there a period of time where the mom had an opportunity and just didn't
Yeah,
pass?
it was different. And again, I'm going to kind of skip over a lot of like the weeds of this, because
Sure.
once you get into this kind of this, by the way, I wrote a book. It's all in a book.
Oh, great.
Once you get into this part of the story, it becomes a little less helpful for me to be in the real weeds, because like there's an infinite amount of possibilities. Like if you're going to get in this world, I think you have to just be open to a lot of chaos and unknown futures. And that's exactly how it was for us. And so the situation was different for the boys, and then their sister, and then their sister. And both the timing and the way and what was going on, all the context was different. The only similarity was that they all resulted in a call to us because of the biological connection. And even that call was still, are you willing? This is probably temporary. We don't know if it's temporary. Say yes to what you know and say maybe to what you don't know.
Right.
It's kind of that situation. And so the timing was different, and the context was different. Even who they were with was all different. But because of that biological tie, which is unbelievably important, that's what kept that connection going with us. And so we got the calls for that reason. But again, like there's a million ways this might turn out. And we know a lot of foster families and their stories of who's in the house and why. There's as many stories as there are families.
Right. I guess the reason I asked, Tyler, was like for us, right? So same boat happened, right? The mom, had two, mom had another kid, and we got a call, and I just never forget it. They called my wife, and she's like, can we have 24 hours to think about it? And they're like, no, the baby's getting discharged now from the hospital. And that was why it was so, because we chose the adoption path purely and did not go through the fostering. So we had some time and opportunity, and there was a lot of visits with, who they were being fostered with at the time. So it was a very different environment. So you were used to the like call and boom, you get him. We're like, hey, can we have a day? No, literally. So I know she called me. We had the conversation. There was some logistics that had to change. And like 2 hours later, it was the stork story. Like, here you go, here's a baby. And that was shocking for us because we chose a different path.
Yeah.
And I say shocking. It was different of what we had already experienced, right, to this circumstance. And that's why I asked if it was a little different.
That was not an insulting question at all.
Oh, no, yeah.
I'm just like trying to leave space because there's so many possibilities.
Sure.
And ultimately, if this is like a research conversation for you, like what is this like? I think ultimately the real bottom line is you just have to be open to operating with a tremendous amount of unknowns. And if you can live with that, then you can probably live with this. Because for you, like you might have thought you were done. All of a sudden, 100%. Now you have 24 hours to make a life-changing decision. That's not typical. Like biological pregnancies, there's a pretty long timeline.
Right.
But it's not the case for us. Really.
Yeah, we didn't even know. We didn't know the mom was pregnant. And that's why all of a sudden we hear like, hey, she had another kid. We're like, what? We didn't even know. And just like you said, trying to keep the siblings together. And it was like, hey, you have like an hour to decide. And we're like, okay. And changing in a lot of different ways. And I think, like you said, here's the crazy part is the wife and I were joking, like, yeah, we're done. But we always were like, what if she had another kid? Oh yeah, no way. Will we take it? I don't know. Maybe, you know, so we had half, I'm not going to say joked about it, but we had that conversation. And like you said, once you've opened your door and your heart to love, it's really hard to turn that away. Now, I will tell you now, we're in a circumstances purely just logistically where we'd have to say, hey, we'll keep in touch, however it works out to make sure the siblings have connection. But there's literally logistically, and we are at that point now. Like we're tapped out, though we do have additional space in the van and in the beds. We're literally just tapped out.
But that's real. Like we also like we're at a life stage where I'm an old man, man. When I drop my kid off at kindergarten, like I am clearly, is this grandpa? Like, why is this guy still doing diapers? So yeah, we're in the same place. But I think also if this is a research conversation for somebody, it is important to maintain the fact that in these systems, as a parent, as hard as it is to make the decisions, they are still your decisions to make.
Right.
It's like you could have said no. Like that was a choice you made,
True.
a very hard choice on a very hard timeline. And now you've made another one. And so the choices are infinitely complex and difficult, but they are in fact real choices. And I think that's an important part of it to maintain.
And well, so two things. One, I didn't realize you had a book. And two, some of the stuff, even like, Miss Mary, I want to have her come on, is because, in the weeds is important from a factor of research and analysis of people calling in, because I didn't understand termination of parental rights, how that went about, because our first child that we adopted already had termination of parental rights done. Well, she had a younger brother who we sort of heard about, and we're like, I don't know. And then we went and they're like, hey, you can go meet him. Like we call him Mr. Potato Head. It's just funny because of, anyway, so we meet him, great little dude, but he was in a foster home. Mitzi, do you know Mitzi? Does that ring a bell? Mitzi?
I'm not sure I do.
She's amazing. So she's actually now, I think, does a lot of medical, she's well known in the community. So anyways, we go, and she had a very methodical way, right? Okay, I have a kid on the floor playing. I have a kid that's, here getting food. I'm fixing food, boom, boom, rotate. And so it's extremely important and amazing. As that time that he was there, he got as much love and appreciation as he could from her. And I think I can't remember, I think that was the first one. And so she does an amazing job. But there is something to be said, like after that one-on-one connection, if you will, or that family and dynamic, like with a full-time placement, if you will.
Yeah.
And so we got him in. He was a little delayed in development, just again, due to the nature of, the bios and so on. And that was hard to work through. So now it's like, okay, we have this kid, and then we get him, and we're like, we never, again, us personally, and this is where you can bash me, is my heart, again, right? Knowing now, I was like, I don't want high risk, right?
Oh, that's real.
I was like, it will break me. It will break me. It will break me. And again, maybe not, right? This is me. This is me. I'll take it. I'll take all the spears. So they're like, hey, you can take him, but there's always this risk. He doesn't have TPR. I'm like, what do you mean doesn't have TPR? How did she have TPR and then he doesn't? And then eventually down the road, the bios actually signed off. Like, hey, they hadn't visited him. They didn't even do phone calls. All these stories, again, variable stories, like you said. Well, then again, we get that 24-hour thing, and we get the kid, and they're like, yeah, we have to go through the process again. I'm like, what do you mean? This is the third child. Well, we have to go revisit this and this. And then we get it. This is a variable, and I'm doing this on purpose, but we get a social worker in that, unfortunately, it wasn't the right fit for that person and did 3 months. Well, guess what? That 3 months didn't count because they didn't do what was needed. Reset the clock. Now they have 12 months. So we added that on. And then again, the mom got pregnant, and we were like, okay, can we just do a bundle deal? I know it sounds ridiculous, but seriously, like, we don't want to reset the clock and do another 12. I mean, like, that's wow. And that is one of the more interesting parts, like you said, is trying to jump in the state's perspective of, we have to give these parents due diligence. We have to, no matter if the circumstances was the same for the first or the second, when the third and or fourth or fifth or sixth come along, we have to be respectful and give them due diligence. And, when you speak with people, you're like, oh, why don't they just blah, blah, blah. And like, they're humans. Like, you can't just go say, hey, stop. And unfortunately, sometimes these parents don't have the mental capacity to have that understanding. And that was all eye-opening to me. So again, like you said, there's a ton of different stories out there. There's a ton of different variables, but that's some of the stuff I do think to bring awareness and be informed, is the difference between having, if you are looking for the adoption part, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but like the termination of parental rights, what that is, like, what's the typical time frame? And again, there's variances there, but you have to be open. And like you said, I think going back from a high level is, you have to be open. You have to be patient. I'm not saying trust the system, because I think it is important for you to be proactive in that instance, no matter what you're doing or path. Call, be informed. That's a big deal. Things change, by the way. I didn't know that either. Budgetary stuff, county-wise, I had no idea that they'll place it here. And there's all these other things where the parents can actually sign up and get additional resources for expedition of whatever. So that was really eye-opening. So I had to share that, because that was something that, like you said, going back, you have to be open, because you're going to go through, it's a roller coaster ride. And as long as you're prepared, at the end of the day, right, you get off and you're like, cool, I went through a roller coaster.
Yeah, call it what it is, and it's going to be great. So I hear what you're saying, and I'm not trying to like take shots at you or whatever, because like, honestly, the boundaries part of the conversation is a part that every family has to deal with. Like, we've said yes and no to certain things, and our house is closed now. And I think it is important to remember, especially for folks who are trying to figure out how this might work for them. Ultimately, all of the yeses and nos are yours to dictate. And
Right.
that doesn't make it easy to say like, yes, I can and no, I can't, because we're talking about human beings, but we're also talking about ourselves as humans. We have limited capacity. And so,
Sure.
yeah, we sort of set our guidelines and do the best we can in those.
Yeah, which is interesting because we even did that through the adoption side too. And we got a couple of phone calls, and some were, unfortunately, they just needed so much medical. And we were like, oh man, unfortunately, we literally can't do that. It just wasn't in our scope. This is interesting too, because again, right, as I've lived through this, but there's a lot of resources I didn't know even existed about this, right? So again, one of the big reasons I started this channel was like to try to pull in and distribute resources, including people and their experiences and their level of expertise, if you will, in your instance or case. But when you were going through this process, did you find any resources? Were any helpful? And how did you go about finding those resources?
Yeah, like having mentioned at least twice that this whole process has been very humbling for me. I came to a point very early on, which I already talked a little about, where I realized my innate parenting skills were just not quite a good fit, but I did not yet know what's next, or how to change. And I learned the thing that you've probably learned, like there is a whole solar system of resources around how to do this kind of work well. Trauma-informed care is kind of a shorthand for it, but it includes like all sorts of things that as parents of kids coming from difficult places that we kind of have to become armchair experts on in order to give good care to our kids. And so that's been a rolling thing for me. Like we heard the words trust-based relational intervention, that's TBRI, for the first time, maybe a year and a half into our foster care journey. And we went to a conference that still happens. It's called Hope for the Journey. It's like a video conference. And we heard it. And I was like, wait, this might be the thing this is different. Like on its face, I reject the information. I'm like, this is not, okay, this is the opposite. Everything that I do innately, this is the opposite of. And that's what I'm receiving as content. TBRI is backwards and I am forwards. But then also I'm in a humbling experience where like, okay, I'm facing this direction. I call it forwards. That's a value judgment. Turns out it probably wasn't forwards. I'm facing this direction. TBRI seems to be facing the opposite, but also the direction I'm facing has become unhelpful. And so perhaps I'm the one that needs to change directions. And so I kind of came into TBRI as like okay, fine. Like my stuff isn't working, as hard as that is for me to say. Like I'm a good dad, I guess. I thought I was a good dad. But maybe, take that back. No shame. I'm a good dad, but part of being a good dad is like we're continually learning, right? And so being a good parent requires growth. Right. And I was at a point in my parenting journey that required growth in turn a lot of growth, tremendous transformation.
So how did you, so you said you heard about it. Was that through church? Was that through online? Like where did you actually hear about it?
Like all good things in my life, it was my wife, Leslie. And she said, I heard about this thing. And she's a researcher. I'm an intuition person. She's like a research person. And she's already been poking around. You start Googling.
Can I just say something? That's interesting because you said, hey, I'm not a feelings person. I'm more this. And she's more but that's like opposite, that she's the research but feeling person, but you're intuitive and analytical. That's really interesting to me.
No, that's right. I think the best way to put it is, first of all, she's going to have better information than me. Like she'll say if you ask like, what year did something happen? She'll say the right thing. And I'll give you a good sense of it. But for me, like I love taking in information, and my brain is at the steering wheel. But when it's time to make a decision, I do whatever it is that's coming from my gut, assuming not only that my brain has worked it out, but again, that my brain is right, because I still have some humbling left to do.
That's so great.
So yeah, intuition, I think, based on this fact that I work from reason, but then when it's time, I can't exactly tell you all the 10 steps. I just know, okay, I got to here. Here's what I'm doing.
All right.
And I'll never look back for better or worse.
That's great. So she did a lot of research, and then
she's kind of poking around, and she hears about The Connected Parent, which is a book that's like transformational in this trauma-informed care world. It's like the first book you look at. It's Karen Purvis. Karen is with a Y. If you're Googling it, it's called The Connected Parent. She hears about that. Somebody gives her a copy because this stuff also spreads relationally. Like you got a foster parent who's been in it 3 years and they've learned what we haven't learned yet. And like, hey, just come hear this thing out. This has been really effective. we've seen a lot of transformation in our family and we're like, well, my family needs transformation because I'm yelling at everybody and nobody's changing.
Right.
And I'm not living the way I want to live. I don't want to be a dad that does that.
Right.
And it's ineffective. Like it's all wrong for me. And so we kind of heard about it relationally. She kind of starts poking around and finding the books and the blogs at that time. And we go to the conference, which was at a church. And so like a lot of our connections are church connections, but this material, it's very popular in like the church world, but it definitely exists outside of that as well. Like you go into any place that takes trauma-informed care seriously, and you're going to hear those letters, TBRI. It's just doing really solid work. And part of it is you have this academic aspect where it's coming from Texas Christian University and they're doing real actual research and they're documenting, and they got PhD folks, like smart people. And so that's appealing to the folks that want, like, you know, the psychologists and counselors who want data-informed research. It has that, but that's not why we came to it. We came to it because parents were telling us this is a thing that's causing transformation that works. And so we go to the conference. They say everything the opposite of what I feel. I'm sitting there like, whatever. This is a podcast. I just rolled my eyes. You didn't see it. It happened.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I realized that all of my stuff is not working. And so like sort of cynically, I'm like, I'm going to try this thing on. I'm going to give it a test run. I'm going to do everything the opposite. I'm going to just do the things they say. And I'm going to show the world like all I have to do is power through and yell more. And I'll finally be able to say this is silly. But like it turns out it worked. And it was disappointing. It should have been encouraging. Like, oh no. Because here's the thing. You don't know what you don't know, and then you do know it. Like the way they say, like in conversations about racial equity, like know better, do better. Okay, I just learned a thing. I know that I can't not know it. Now I have to do this thing.
Right.
If I'm going to be better, it requires change. And so I'll be getting like a 6-year path to integrate this stuff into my life. This stuff is trauma-informed care. For us, all of this stuff about trauma-informed care came by way of Texas Christian University, TBRI, trust-based relational intervention. You Google that, you're going to find a million things. Good place to start. TCU has a website that lists all their resources really clearly. There's also a YouTube video. It's like an animated video, What is TBRI? And it does a very good job of the broad strokes, like in 3 minutes. But again, it's a whole world. We're talking about learning about sensory needs and how sensory needs sometimes play out in baffling behaviors, and learning about the effects of trauma, like prenatal trauma affects our brain and our body and our behaviors and our belief systems. And we can't pretend just because we're giving a kid structure and we put a roof over their head and we're feeding them that they're getting what they need, because they're coming from a place that requires more than just structure. It also requires nurture and connection. You talked about the triangle earlier on, like jumping back to this earlier part of the conversation. An easy way to understand the very, very broad strokes of the differences, the transformation that was required of me, was that TBRI talks about a triangle being a typical parenting triangle, the one I was handed by the culture, and also that I lived out, like the one that I would have given to my kids. Is like you start with structure. Like, okay, here's how things work. In this family, we do X and Y and Z. And if you do that, things are going to go well. And this is coming from a good place. We want our kids to know how the world works. The world doesn't care how you feel, and you got to act right. And to get you to act right, you know, we're gonna add rules, and we're gonna add a bunch of structure. And TBRI is 100% about structure. Like people sometimes take it as permissive. If you're coming from where the triangle starts with structure, it feels permissive. And so that's where I was coming from. Everything is structure. Structure. We're going to do this thing right. Do what I say. I'm the dad. I got the authority here, you know. And we believe, coming from where I was innately, that if we have the structures right, our kids will grow up healthy and feel loved, and they'll get everything they need because we've provided the lane. Like, here's the lane. We follow the rules, and everything works well, and your teachers love you, and you get A's, and you get a job, and you get married, and all this. And as a dad, that's not coming from a bad place. We want our kid to see the lane and take it.
True.
And so we define the lane primarily for me with rules and structures and authority and all that. And that all exists in the TBRI world. But my triangle was starting with that to lead to ultimately connection and healthiness and love. Like, listen, it's important that we get this right. You know I love you, dude. but just act right. You know what I mean? Like, so we start with act right, and we hope that providing these boundaries gets our kids to live in the world in a way that's productive and helpful for them from a good place. Like we're not doing this because we want our kids to, feel unloved, but ultimately the weight is on the structure, and the end result for us is connection. We want connection. TBRI flips the triangle and says, everything starts with connection. You cannot provide good structure if you don't have good connection. And when a kid has come from a place of trauma, when they've come from a difficult background, when their life experience tells them that the people who take care of you, who love you most, sometimes disappear, they live with that. Like, they can't just pretend that you, a perfect stranger, or even their dad for 3 years or whatever, they can't just pretend that that connection is automatic. And so when we're coming from with kids who have experienced broken connections and have come to believe these things about themselves, and the trauma they've experienced has affected their brains and their bodies, there's so much here. Like, every bit of this is a whole universe of things. In order to provide good parenting to them, instead of starting with, like, listen, these behaviors are crazy. Get these behaviors right. Like, you're going to get kicked out of school, dude. Yeah. Again, coming from a good place. Yeah. I really want you to do well in school. I want you to have everything you need. You can't get a job, if you're stealing all the time. Right. But we may fail to see, like, this kid steals because they required food at a time where their caregiver wasn't giving them food. Yep. And they took in food because they have a survival instinct. We're built with that. And so if all we look at is the behavior, and our only solution to behavior is structure, we will not necessarily create connection. Right. And we probably won't change behavior. Right. Or we'll change behavior in a way that ultimately leads to broken connection later. Compliance just until I have enough power to not comply. Yep. And then we've doubled everything. So in the TBRI world, the triangle is flipped, where we put most of our energy into connection, which is beautiful if you can live with it. Like, if you can transform your mindset, if you can flip the triangle, yeah, of course it starts with connection, right? Because, like, as a dad, I'm not primarily responsible with making my kids act right. I really want them to, and I want them to do well. I'm actually primarily responsible with helping them feel connected and loved and secure in who they are. And I can hope that if I do that well, and my kid knows that they're loved and they have experienced real human connection, that they'll grow up to be a person who can make real human connection, right, and can act from a place of security, and can ultimately accept structure and live with it and create it themselves. But if I start with structure, hoping to get to there, it's never going to happen.
Yeah. As you can tell, he may or may not be an instructor in this. So, I just want to give a real example. Then I want to go back and talk. So by the way, just real quick, is The Connected Child the second book from The Connected Parent?
Yeah. Connected Parent, Connected Child. Okay. If you're in this because you're a professional, Connected Therapist is also great. Okay. But ultimately, if there's anything that TCU puts their name on, or if there's anything that carries, like, the trade, TBRI has a trademark symbol. If they're carrying the trademark symbol, they've been vetted. This is a whole world of stuff that's all helpful. Again, like, we're talking about sensory stuff. We're talking about biology stuff. We're talking about, I love this book called Brainstorm. It might be called Mindstorm. You gotta have to link that later. Dan Siegel is a doctor who looks at all this from a medical doctor perspective, talking about brain development. Why is it that trauma affects our bodies? Well, it's actually a biological thing. It's not just like, I feel bad because I wasn't fed. It's that our biological cues change, right, and the structures and connections in our brains change to adapt to those things. And so there's a biological component. Everything that Dan Siegel, MD Dan Siegel, has ever done is in that world, and is super helpful as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. So after going through your training, right? Spoiler alert. Yeah. So when I went through your training, it was like, remember me asking the question, and you're like, I get it, man. I was there. But like, coming back, and so the one thing I want to say and transition into this is, like, that doesn't have to be an older child, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a kid that can recognize that. Again, I think we got Casey, she was 2 or 2.5, and, growing up in a tent and being left alone in tent for hours on end. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that they had that realization. They're 5 and they know that the parent's gone. No, I mean, they could be young, growing up 18 months old, whatever else, and that just stays with them.
That's right.
And so, I was the, like, exact traditional, like, what are you doing? Stop doing that. Rah, 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 yell, yell, yell. Nothing happened. And it's funny. And it's the same with my wife too. Like, we both grew up, and it's like, okay, And I said, maybe you got to try this. And I'll do it every once in a while. Like it'll like, it's revert. It's extra energy to go like, hey, don't forget, it's the triangle. So like, and her chemicals change and she just cries. She goes in this emotional thing, even though, we found some really good medication. Finally, she's like, it's that by doctor, not by us, but
yeah, we're about it.
Right. Like, so, which we'll talk about. But, I hug her. So when she goes, if there's something, I hug her, it gets her to the learning part. Remember when you're talking about the flipping the lid. Oh, sorry, I was doing this. Yeah. Flipping the lid part, like to get her back where she can actually accept the communication that's happening now. And that's my immediate thing that I do all the time now that I learned. I think it was good Lord, was it 2 years, 3 years? It was
probably easily 2
years ago is like hugging her. Really just doing that. It could be like something just blatant, like, oh, I don't want to eat. Please eat. Okay, let me go hug. Okay, stop. All right, think about it. Okay, listen, just have a bite or two. Like, okay, a bite or two. Okay, I need you to do 3 more bites of this, then you can eat this. And like, but that hugging, like, completely changed it. And so I'll do that with all the children now. It's like if something happens, like give them a good hug, figure it out. Even my biological 12-year-old.
There you go.
Like that, like maybe indirect trauma, something that's like not known to us, but something, but anyways, it works. It works. Like, blah, 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 dad, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. I'm 12 going to a teenager or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I go and I hug like, okay, Riley, like, what's up? Like what's going on? And then brings her emotions down a little bit. And then we're able to have a conversation.
Yeah. Because you started with connection, right?
Huge.
Two things I love there. First of all, like you're in my world now. Like we got a 4-hour training. I can just do the whole thing. Flipping your lid. If you're on the podcast, we made a fist with our thumb in the middle, and then we extended our 4 fingers up towards the ceiling, exposing our thumb. The idea of flipping your lid is that every person on planet Earth is built with a fight, flight, freeze, fawn. That's a new one. Response where it keeps them alive. And kids who have experienced trauma have had to use that a lot to keep themselves alive, to go into survival mode. And so we say flipping your lid is going into survival mode. When a kid or an adult, a dad, when our lid is flipped, when we're in survival mode, fight, flip, freeze, we do not have the capacity to make rational decisions. And so like, take parenting out of this for a minute. If you and your spouse have come into a conflict where both of you have flipped your lids, nobody's using reason, we're shouting, there are no words that are going to correctly clear a path to solve the issue until the lid is back on and connection is made. And so again, I don't care if you're right or wrong in an argument with the spouse, with your kid, with whoever. If the lid is flipped, your only first goal is to put the lid back on because you don't have access to the things you need to solve the problem. And so for you, you're saying like, this is the quintessential TBRI question. What does this child need? This child, I know they need food. They're sitting in front of their table screaming. Let's start with connection. Like, I know they need it. If I just yell at them, eat your food. Now my lid's flipped. Nobody's going anywhere. Maybe the need is connection first. I'm going to hug you. We're putting the lid back on. Now I'm going to give you some choices. I know you have to eat. I'm not saying eat or don't eat. I'm saying, hey, do you want the mashed potatoes or do you want the chicken nuggets? You want syrup on your chicken nuggets? Fine. Is that going to get them in your belly? Like, we're going to lower the bar a little. We're going to get the food in. Maybe not do that every day, but we're just finding a way to meet the need, which starts with, like, let's put the lid back on. And that, you said this too. This is the other thing I wanted to jump in on. We don't have 2 parenting styles for our bio kids and our adopted kids. Like, this transformation we've gone through is a whole life transformation. Like, we do this with our kids. We do this with each other. I'm in pastoral care. Like, I do a lot of parts of my ministry are working with people in very, very difficult situations. This is how I now approach those situations. Like, it's not like, hey, I got what you need. Let me throw some cash away, or let me get you in a home, or, or if I'm getting yelled at, which happens all the time because I'm dealing with people in very difficult situations. My job isn't to shout the right words back and say, I'm right, you're wrong. Even if I'm right, it couldn't matter any less. Like, my job is like, let's put the lid back on. Let's de-escalate. What's the need here? Oh, you're stressed out because you slept in a car last night. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow night. I might not be able to get you in a house, but if I can hear that and I can say, what's the real need? And I can put the lid back on and we can talk from a place of connection. It's still better than just saying the right words when both our lids are flipped. So these are like the philosophical tools that inform the sort of life change required. Because you also said a thing that's true. for the first, I don't know, 5 years of trying to do this, it's always a logical process. This is like, okay, what's the TBRI thing right now? I need to do X, Y, and Z. You don't feel like it. Like you feel like yelling or whatever. Then you just do the things because they work. But eventually it becomes your language. And eventually looking for the need is your first step because you've created this path in your brain. And so for people like me that it was counterintuitive to, it takes so much energy to implement until it doesn't. Right. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is now it's part of who I am. And it's part of how I connect to the world.
Which is interesting because it can come across a little new wave-ish, if you will, right?
Absolutely.
From a structured, like it's not the typical societal, like you just said, multi-generational, this is what we've always learned. It's informative. And you always think like hugging, oh, that's touchy. But hey, it's true. It's real. Like chemicals, medical, touching.
That's right.
I mean, right. It's a love language. There's got to be something there. But the proof's in the pudding when it comes to that. So before we get too far along down that path, so you said connected parent, connected child, there's some resources there. Were there any other resources that you found along your journey during that time period?
Yeah. For Leslie, the connected parent and all the the stuff that Karen Purvis wrote directly, that's her kind of bread and butter that was most transformative for her. For me, it was all the Dan Siegel stuff. This is the MD stuff, the brain chemistry stuff was very, very helpful for me. And then in the world of there are TBRI practitioners all over the country. We eventually went to a proper training where we sit down for 3-4 hour classes and we talk about connection. Then we talk about empowerment. What are ways we can get ahead of conflicts, and talk about snacks and protein and hydration and structures. And then we talk about ultimately correction, which is like the most structured part of it. So we went through all the trainings. There are trainings somewhere in your area. My wife runs our area's Pearl project. They got a website. They also have Zoom trainings. And so if there's not a person in your area, you can get in these conversations. I would say the important part of that is you're getting in the conversation with people who understand where you're coming from. It's not just receiving something intellectually. You're like next to somebody on a Zoom call who's also frustrated that all of their best efforts aren't working. And you're talking to, in the Pearl project, every one of us who are practitioners are also parents. So we're not coming at this as like intellectuals who say like, here's great information. We're like, yeah, dude, I did this thing and then I made this change and here's how it works in my home. And so that lived experience is kind of a real part of how we do things at the Pearl project. Egomaniac, I've said this like 6 times. I wrote a book, Let's Go. It's on Amazon, which is just my family's story. But I also did a kid's book this year. Like I wrote an illustrated kid's book.
Oh, that's great.
Trauma-informed care, like an ABC book. It's called A Book of Caring. Those are on Amazon. They are not as good as the TBRI things. But the one thing about them is that I get money when you buy those. So those are out there. My name is Tyler Fuller. I'm on Amazon.
That's awesome.
But I would say if you can find relational ways to engage in the conversation, you're going to go further faster. Like you and I'm sure you could have received the information, but then like stopping in the hallway and being like, dude, and then all of a sudden we're dads, Yeah. All this, that's like worth 10 hours of information.
That's very, very true. So I guess at what period of time did you and or your wife decide, hey, we have all this information. Yeah. Let's go ahead and become like instructors. Let's do this. Like, did someone approach you and say, hey, wow, we really enjoy how you communicate and we've noticed you at a couple of trainings. Like, how did that go for you and your wife?
Yeah. So at every step of the way, Leslie is ahead of me. This is a theme. And she had come to a life transition where she had been a school teacher. She loves kids. She's great with kids. She did not have to make a 180. She made like a 30-degree shift in who she was. I made a 180. A lot of this is more innate for her. And so our kids were getting a little older. We had stopped the adoptions. We had closed our house to foster care. And she was at a point in her life where she's like, well, what's next? Like she could go teach again and she would love it. But the way that implementing this trauma-informed care had been so transformational in our house that she just knew she wanted this to be a part of whatever was next. And so without a real plan, she went to become a practitioner, which is like, it's a heck of a process. And so like, I am not a counselor. I got no license. I got like a master's in divinity, which sounds like a Harry Potter thing. It's a pastor thing.
I love it.
But I went through like a week-long training. Like it's like 9 to 5 5 days in a row with like 600 pages of reading.
Whoa.
And so like this, I used to say armchair expert. Like I am not an academic, but this is what it looks like to become a practitioner. It's not just like, you know, where you go to Bozo the Clown School and you pay the money and they give you the nose.
Right.
That's such an old reference.
I love that.
It's not like becoming a part of any of these multi-level marketing schemes where all you need is willingness.
Right.
And so Leslie went through that earlier than me. She probably did it, I don't know, 6 years ago with, again, no real plan, except that she loves the work so much. And this was the next step. And so she became a practitioner, which means she is able to give the trainings. And she just started giving the trainings. Like in our town, we have connections in the foster care community. This was transformative for us. Let's just get out there and start telling people how it works. Yeah. And then organically, she came into contact with a person named Joy Zedler in Central Florida, also in the TBRI world. It's a very tight community. And they were doing the exact same work. And our stories are similar. Like their adoption process is the same. And it turns out, I don't know how you like to measure personality, but by any measure, they're exactly the same. My wife and Joy are exactly the same. Like, I don't care what, I don't do Enneagram. Like, I love Enneagram, but I don't have it all internalized and memorized. Whatever the Enneagram is for one of them is the other, whatever, they're the same. And they just kind of like, now there's two people who feel kindred to each other, who appreciate each other's experience and doing the same work. And so eventually they made a formal partnership where the work Joy had started under the name The Pearl Project in Central Florida in Ocala. Shout out to Joy. Leslie planted here in the Panhandle of Florida in the Niceville area. And so we're essentially a chapter of the Pearl Project. We're also the only chapter of the Pearl Project. This is all new work.
Right.
And so she started then officially offering the training under that name. And then she went back to school. She got a master's.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she got an MSW, Master of Social Work at FSU.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So go Seminoles or, you know, whatever.
Oof, they're kicking butt. That was the first, real quick story.
Yeah.
First time, so Riley's always wanted to go to, 12-year-old, wanted to go to a college football game and surprised her for her birthday. And I said, hey, you know, got some tickets. And so lesson learned, bought off StubHub. And then I was like, oh, let's make it a really good experience. I'm going to get really good parking. And so I paid, you know, what I was like, okay, cool. I've never done one. I paid a little bit of money. I was like, okay, great. Well, we show up, we're parked right next to the stadium to the point where I did 2 loops and they're like, oh no, you have to show this to the cops to let you back through. I'm like, okay. And it's all the tailgaters that have been there for years. And then I'm like, all right. So luckily I had stopped and asked somebody directions on like how to get there. And somebody told me that. Well, funny enough, we park, we walk over and the buses are about to stop. There's cheerleaders and the players about to get off. And I see them again. I said, hey, where's this entrance? I don't know. Like like I'm looking and there's like CCDD or whatever. And this one's like something weird. And he's like, oh, go by the undefeated statue or, you know, unconquered statue. I'm like, okay, where's that? He's like, that way. I said, okay, cool. Because of course this person graduated there. Yeah. Walk around the unconquered statue. Here's this line. It's just a little line. And then there's elevators. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty sweet. So we go through the line. And a lot of like, I didn't realize some like retired coaches from, they had was it 1993? All the players and coaches there was like part of that particular game. They honored all them and everything from the national division. So anyways, so we go up the elevators to go in and I know it said, drinks and food included. I was like, oh, cool, man. Free popcorn, sodas. We go up and it's like the whole floor, the 4th floor, and it's a buffet of food. They weren't open bar, but they had 2 bars for adult beverages. But then they have like brisket they're cutting. They had like a hot dog, hamburger, like stand, all of this stuff. And I look at Riley and I said, Riley, this will never happen again. Like this was by happenstance. So we go look for our seats and they're cushioned seats underneath an overhang, and the overhang has TVs. And I'm like, oh no. Like I bought these like VIP tickets and I had no clue because that's just not how they came across on StubHub. We sit down, there's these round tables. We sit down and there's a gentleman there and we're chatting with him. He's a little older gentleman. In fact, I think he was older than what I like his appearance. And he's like, yeah, I haven't missed a game since 1983. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, we live over here, but I have an RV and we drive down every time or something. And it was mind blowing. Some of the cheerleaders were up and Riley took some pictures. She really wanted to, all that stuff. But anyways, so go college football, FSU. They're doing
that
phenomenal
poor girl
this year.
though, man. She's going to graduate. go to some college and show up and be like, oh, this is how the peasants do it?
I told her, I said, look, there's the student section. That's where you're going to end up. So just to let you know, no cushioning, nothing.
There's no brisket.
There's no brisket. I felt so. But yes, FSU, fantastic Master of Social Working.
So she gets the MSW. She graduated, I don't know, a year and a half ago.
Wow.
But while she was going through the process, she's becoming a licensed counselor as well. While she's going through the process, she just kind of grows what she's doing here in the area. And then I became a practitioner in part because I wanted to go deeper. Like it's so effective for me in my personal life. Like why not take a next step? But also like there's really a thin line between pastoral work and preaching and like teaching and training. Like these are all part of the same gift sets and passions for me. And so also once again, this is a very there's not a lot of dads in the world of training in trauma-informed care. There are some really great ones, but we just felt like it would be helpful to have a male voice on the team. And I was like, well, I can offer a male voice. I'm a male. So that's
I have a voice?
That's about what I bring to the team is like, I'm a male. Congratulations. But again, deeply in love with the work and living it out. And so it just was a logical step. And so my involvement is a little bit here and there. Like I am a pastor full time, but I love the work and I love the people, and it's been transformative for me. So sometimes I'm like creating content. I like to write, and I just make things, the book, for example. And sometimes I'm doing direct teaching and training because it's just a thing. It's a little side passion that I love, and that's how we got into all that.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you did the TBRI. TCU is the big basis. Yeah. Have y'all had the opportunity to go to TCU and have conversations with them at all? Or?
Yeah, Leslie is like neck deep in it. Like they know the Pearl Project well. We're a partner organization, which if you're in that world, it means something. Like it's like a cosign basically. And so Leslie now goes to practitioner trainings as a mentor parent, and yeah, she's been running around all in that world. For me, my interest is a lot more boots on the ground and local. And so I don't know that Leslie's been to, I do know that Leslie hasn't been to Texas Christian, but like in terms of the TBRI community and the places that it's originating, yeah, she's a lot closer to that inner circle than me. And that's by design. Like I'm happy to like, teach the people that are in front of me. And that's about the size of it for me.
Right. So something unique I want to touch on before, but I want to make sure that we've hit on all this, all these topics before we move on. Do you have any other resources you suggest or other like websites or anything that people can go on, especially like looking at the difference between fostering and adopting and or more like you said, maybe they have or have not already fostered or adopted, but they want to know a little bit more and be informed. Is there anything else that you suggest? Yeah.
So we have a couple like tcu.edu is the Texas Christian site. The Pearl Project, of course, has a site where they're listing both other resources and the trainings that they offer, where you can kind of get into these conversations in person or by Zoom. TCU also has a list on their site of like, I need to find a practitioner near me. And that way you could find like who's in this local community that we're in. That would be at the TCU site, the Texas Christian site. In terms of the adoption stuff, if you're ready to like make next steps, a good resource is to look for a local agency who is doing this in your community. If you want a national one for international adoptions, I like Bethany Christian, but there's a bunch out there. The part of your work is finding one that feels like a good fit for you culturally, in line with what you're trying to do. And then again, we're thinking about Hague accredited countries. That's an important part of that. In terms of foster care, every community has every geographical community has a foster care community. And so find a foster parent. They know where the people are. They know who is doing this in your area because it's state related, everything becomes incredibly local. But becoming a part of an actual human community is definitely the right way to approach this because you're gonna have real conversations. I kept the blog up for a while where everything I've said, I've also wrote like, here's the 3 options, here's our story. All of my book is actually broken up in chapters on the blog. It's called Unremarkable Conjecture. It is 100% non-academic. Like it's silly and it talks the way that I talk. But if you want like real talk from the ground level experience, that's all up there still searchable. And all my adoption and foster care stuff is categorized. But I would say if you want to make next steps, trying to find a human connection to a person that's close to the work is probably the best next step because you can get a long way intellectually. But but it's going to require community to do this well. And so just talking to folks that are around you that have done it is a good step.
So I was curious before. I have to know, because I think we talked about it. I could have sworn, but you've watched Instant Family, right?
Oh yeah, love Instant Family. Yeah, I forgot about that. Highly recommend.
That's always when people first come to me, I'm like, have you seen Instant Family? And it's like free on, I think, Hulu and Prime and some other streaming sites. But I'm like, have you ever watched it? And I didn't realize, like, that's literally based off, I think, either one of his directors or somebody, in Mark Wahlberg, which anyways, great guy, like a great guy. Like, to do that and just seeing some of the realization, and like, there's some real, I will tell you, after going through that same course you did, and they have those personalities in the class where the lady like draws up and they're like, do you want Blindside? Is that what you're, she's like, no, what's Blindside? You're like, that looks just, anyway. And you saw how that story turned out recently, by the way, which is really interesting. But like, all those different personalities, I'm like, oh my gosh, we had some of those personalities. And 100%. Where you're like, one lady, I mean, oh my goodness, she was like, well, I'm just looking for a play date for my kid. And we're all looking around like,
you are not a good fit.
Is that,
you're not at the
like
place.
To the point where the instructors were going to sort of, you know, remove that person, which I think they did after the fact. But anyways, it was eye opening. But like the like we talked about, the black plastic bags, trash bags, and then like all the, you know, particular, like, oh, you got all these animals from every core of it, like all these, but the like, going and meeting them, and then like having a teenager and their brothers and sisters, I like, oh man. And then the table scene, like all of that stuff. I mean, oh my goodness, a lot of that stuff was just like really hit home. So it's a funny thing. I always tell people,
if you want an easy way, like a objectively fun and like funny look into a world, but it's also like a real take. Instant Family is great. To your point about different levels of readiness and expectation. I'm a pastor. I still freely recommend this movie. It's great. I love it. I've recommended it to people who have come back to me like, oh, there's a lot of language in that movie. I'm like, okay, well, you're probably not ready. Like, there's a lot of language in the world that we're about to go into.
That is very true. So I want to talk about something that might be a little niche, but you and I can relate. And I know that there's others out there. And well, this could be bio, or it could be, you know, either however you did it, naturally or not, having a large family.
Oh yeah.
So I have to touch on that. I have to take the opportunity prior to us wrapping up. I really want to touch on that. How has that changed your life, right? You said, hey, 1 or 2 were done. Nope, we need more. Now you're up to 6.
Yeah.
So I'll be specific on my questions, because you could, right, there's a big thing here. So one, let's talk about, okay, you said it early, right? Chick-fil-A, financial. Right, that's a big deal. That's one of the hardest things is, you know, depending on your fostering or adopting, sometimes you do get some income, and everyone always talks about that. I will tell you from personal experience, it's not very much. It pays for maybe half the diapers that we go through, like for one kid, not the rest, right? So every kid, and then if you choose to put your child in daycare or so on, or food, I mean, it is not as substantial as people make it out to be in the movies. Like, oh, they just take advantage. I'm like, okay, I don't know how, but from a without, you don't have to say like specific, but from a financial aspect, right? Because you said it earlier, hey, how much do I have to live? Well, Chick-fil-A, 24,000. But you don't have to give the numbers. But how did that hit you and your family, right, from a financial standpoint?
Yeah, and I think you did say something important that I usually like to say, but I forgot, which is the financial component of foster care. There is a stipend that when you're fostering that comes when you have a placement that, like you said, is helpful, but it's not all you need, but it's not nothing. And then adoption, if you're doing it through the state, through foster care, is wholly paid for. So again, there's a lot of complication, but there is a financial aspect as well. We're a family, 6 kids, 8 total. I'm a pastor. My wife runs a nonprofit. So like, yeah, we don't have a ton of money. And so one of the many changes it required of us to understand, like large family structures, one of them is this sort of financial thing. So there's a mixed benefit, right? In my family, every single day, it's about like a normal kid's birthday party. Like, you got kids. No, you should never be bored in my house. Like, there is somebody to play with all the time. And that's an advantage that my kid might have over a kid who's like an only child, who's like only going to go to dad and say, Dad, what do we do now? Okay, we're going to play a board game. We're going to play, what do we do next? I shouldn't have that going on in my house. Like, the environment is such that there's a lot of connection to be had among our kids. And that's beautiful. And we love it. It's great. That's an advantage. The also very clear disadvantages is like, we can't go to a place without everyone just knowing we're at that. We barely go to other kids' birthday parties because like, you don't know what you're asking for when you invite all of us. Like you want 10 people at the party. We're 8 people. So we got grandma and grandpa and us. And so we have sized ourselves out of a lot of normal situations. And we just take it as it is. Like we're called to this. We love our family as it is, but we also freely acknowledge that there are changes that we made that make our family function differently. So like financially, we don't go out to eat a ton. Like sit down restaurant is like an event, and we do it as an event. Yeah. Like put your fancy pants on. I'm going to teach you how to tip. You got to talk to the waitress directly or the waiter directly. All those things. We don't just stop on the way home because like we need food. When we go out for food, we're like, okay, is this a nugget tray? Because that's actually cheaper than like 8 number ones. Just give me a small tray. You know, that's,
you cater for yourself, your family. You're like, what's the catering?
We're Sam's Club. Like we're officially like if you got Costco or Sam's Club, that's how we do things. And I mean, again, finance. Listen, like people struggle financially. I get that. It's hard. Finances is hard, but you tend to live with what you have. And so like, did I feel financially strapped when I had 2 kids? Yeah. I was living differently, but I also was like, oh man, having 2 kids is a lot. I feel the same way now. So like we've made adjustments in our lifestyle as we go, but the feeling is the same. Like, man, it's hard to live. And that doesn't feel different. Like how we do things is different. We don't go out. We go to a movie twice a year. It's a thing to go to a movie. We have an allowance system that's real cheap, and the kids have to save. And our kids know they don't just get a car when they turn 16. And there's nothing wrong with all that.
Right.
Like there's nothing wrong with having an only child that does all of the things. Sure. That's great as well.
Right. That's right. Right.
But you can't pretend if you have 6 kids that you can live in the same way you do if you have one. You have to acknowledge we need structural changes or everybody dies. So like our kids choose.
Wait, did you say?
Yeah.
If not everyone dies.
I guess that's hyperbole, but only barely. Our kids choose like a thing that they're going to be into. So like, you're not going to play baseball and soccer. You're going to say, which one do I want to try this year? And God's honest truth is like, we have some kids with some innate sports abilities. We're not a sports family. Even if we were a sports family, like we could never be a traveling family. And that's a sacrifice that we make. And that's an opportunity our kids might have had that they don't have. It is actually impossible for us to be a traveling sports family. And so we give that up, but what we gain is all these other things you get from. So we have to recognize the balance. We can't say we can't have it all,
right?
But we love what we have, and we recognize it's different than what a family of 1 or 2 or 3 kids has. And we love what families of 1 or 2 or 3 kids has. But for us, as our family increased in size, we kept having these conversations. Like we can't just get in the car and go to a place. Like we have to have TBRI, it requires transitions. You try to throw all the kids in the car quickly, everybody's lids are getting flipped. And we have to have a lead-in time. And like, do you even have enough seats at your table for us? And, you know,
right.
So everything structurally required change. Our house is bigger, our car is bigger. But the feeling is the same. Yeah, it's hard to live. It's hard to get by, you know?
So one of the things, I don't know if you've seen it, like walking through the house, and it's still, right. So the house we have, it was not meant to have now. So we are overloaded by clothes. Laundry and clothes has been one of the things because of the sizes. So while funny enough, the 2 youngest are 11 months apart, they're actually like in similar clothes. So to the point where if I even try to help do laundry and, you know, I'm like, okay, whose is this? My 12-year-old's wearing very close to my wife's stuff now. So I'm like, whose shirt is this? Are these, whose socks are these? And then the little ones, I'm like, okay, littles. But then we have people that will give us clothes, which is great, but it's like, where do you put them? And then you're like, okay, now I have to transition from, you know, 3T to 4T. Now we're going to 5 and 6T. So what do I do with these? Well, I need to keep them because these littles are going to be 3T. So it's like this nightmare of clothes. And they're like, oh, these are holiday clothes. Well, we need to put them over here because we only have so much space in the closet for everything. And it's like, you know, it has been logistically from a clothing standpoint. And I mean, luckily, right? What did you say? You have 2 9th graders, 2 7th graders. Is that what you said?
Yeah. That's right.
I mean, luckily that's semi, right?
Well, no, first of all, this is why having not had a whole bunch of FaceTime hours, you and I connect so deeply. Just yes to all of that. 100%. It's exactly the same. There's no solution. You suffer. We do laundry every day.
Yep, that's right.
I don't know whose clothes are whose clothes. I just do my best. Who cares? Like it is what it is.
They're semi-warm or clothed, half naked when they go out.
People who love us so much bring things into our house. A lot of those things I immediately bring straight out. I can't deal with this. I can't file this into a Tupperware. Hey, if you do that, nobody's going to be 2 hours into this who really knows me. But if you brought us stuff, I love you. Thank you. I didn't mean it.
No, I mean, well, the good thing is it's repurposing, right? So it's the same boat as we'll get some stuff and we're like, okay, like we meet other folks or families or whatever. And it's the same boat. You're like, oh man, like perfect. Like here, or you have family too that may or may not have children of whatever respective side. And that's the other thing is like, my sister-in-law has certain, so we get like this, it's just revolving. Now I will tell you, as you said earlier, pro and con. Pro is, while the money is going towards things, it doesn't have to go towards clothes, which is phenomenal because I mean, so, and my wife will go, there's I think it's called We Runs. It's a place. And so sometimes we'll take the clothes for, what is it? Starts with a C. Words just escaping me, for where you get paid commission. It's not that.
Yeah. No, consignment.
Thank you. Consignment. So like consignment or we'll purchase those clothes because we don't need brand new clothes. I mean, I hate to say that's weird, but it's like when they go through it so quickly, it's like, do you really need the brand new latest and greatest? And like you said, sacrifices are made going from 1 or 2 children to 4, 5,
100%.
6
it's part
children.
of it.
So, hey, thanks. You're not going to get that maybe for your birthday or Christmas or something.
Yeah. And we don't have time for this, but I can't help but say it. Like I came up from like a very DIY punk rock background. I have like an environmentalist tendency in me. This is no joke. If you can't see me, I'm on a podcast. I wear the same jeans every single day. Like I've worn these jeans for 6 months. Clothing for me, this is a non-issue. I couldn't care any less if my kids don't have designer brands. I philosophically, for myself and for my family, we buy used because I'm trying to produce less and use less.
Right.
And so that happens to coincide with my giant family, but that also predated my giant family.
Yeah. No, I get you. Yeah, it's funny. So one of the things in that aspect, which I'm sure because of your studies, and I literally just had this conversation yesterday because I wore a hat and a hoodie to work, which is like not the norm where I work at all. It's usually button down, dress pants, all that stuff. So, but Thursday is a little looser. Thursdays, Fridays. So anyways, so I said, you know what? I wear this. If you go back and look, I wear the same exact thing. Blue shorts. I did buy some other shorts for a long, but anyways, these blue shorts and this black. I have like 15 of these and I have, I think, 4 of these blue ones. One, it fits, it's comfortable. I'm going to buy a couple and then I'll wear it for years until these things like fall apart or like, some of these shirts are just, they're not the thickest, best shirts in the world. But also it's a decision thing. And I think it was in a Steve Jobs book by Walter Isaacson and or some other stuff is if you have that and you don't have to make a decision, you can save that time and energy to put towards other things, which I think is ingenious.
It's like the Atomic Habits conversation. I have automated how I dress. If I'm at work, I have 15 shirts. They all look the same. They're buttoned out. Who cares? Right. Everyone I've worked in the same place 15 years. Everyone knows I don't really have clothes. If I'm off work, I got a black t-shirt. I got a white t-shirt.
Yep.
Ta-da.
I love it. Well, the funny thing is, Tyler, is like, I literally just had the conversation with the same girl that I was talking about, the hat and the hoodie is, I said, what's funny? My goal is next because, now like with the shirts and, I dry clean to try to keep them as long as possible because I don't want to keep cycling and buying new things. But there's a whole chemical process, dry clean, whatever, it doesn't matter. Point being is I want to go where I get all black long sleeve button down and then I wear those with whatever color pants it may be. Maybe I'll have 2 or 3, like a gray, a khaki, whatever. And then that's it for
call it capsule wardrobe where every piece matches every other piece. You just go get 2 things.
But I don't want, I like the fact of having the same shirt. Like, I don't want to have to vary the shirt. I want to just do it. And I think it'll respect it. In fact, I did a presentation recently and I put sunglasses on and I'm going to probably wear sunglasses now when I do my presentations. It's just how it's going to be because of the lighting. Is there anything else for the large family side of the house? I know we joked about some stuff. So finances, laundry, food is always a big deal. Costco, Sam's, like you said. In fact, let
me jump in on food for a second.
Yeah, please do.
Not just the volume of food, but this is also where you get into some TBRI stuff. Food is a very, very easy place for unnecessary conflict with kids who have come from difficult places. What will they eat? What will they not eat? We know they need to eat. We know they need hydration. We know that they need protein. We got to find ways to get around like food fights. It's not, nobody wins in a food fight. And so in our house, we're on a set menu. It's like Mondays is like a breakfast for dinner. Tuesdays is Taco Tuesdays. Wednesdays, like we eat at the church together. Thursday is like grilled meat and vegetables. so again, automating, trying to keep it as simple as possible. But we always have like, hey, you don't like the chili because it does you some kind of way. That's fine. PBJ, just make a PBJ. You got to have food. It's okay. You got to make it. Like, here's the compromise. Like, if you don't want what I'm serving, you go make the PBJ. But also, the goal here is that you eat food. And like, I've been served food I don't like, and so I get it. And so that's food for us. We have a menu we can kind of predict and trust, and then we also have like, hey, dude, it's okay if this doesn't work. You have to eat what's okay. PBJ is an option. Go make it. That kind of thing.
I like that. Well, it's funny. We've tried, we haven't, but hopefully we'll stir back to that at some point. But we have that exact thing, right? Which my 6-year-old Casey will eat PB&Js every day, all day. In fact, she likes them frozen. It's the weirdest.
That's weird.
Do you know the look? She's got some she'll always ask for stuff frozen. I'm like, you can't have it frozen. It's maybe a little defrosted. I mean, but like she has this innate sense of like always wanting something. I don't know if it's a cold thing. I don't know. But anyways, but what I really picked up on there was make them make it. I like that. I like, because that's the thing. My wife's like, I put food in front of you. You will eat what I put in front of you. And then we was giving her like, okay, you want some applesauce or yogurt? Okay, or whatever. But like, okay, you go get it or you make it. I like that idea. That's
it's
a really
structure
good,
and nurture. What's the need? I understand that this food isn't going to work for you. I can either double down. You're going to sit at this thing till it's gone, and like nobody wins. And also the food it doesn't get eaten that way. It doesn't work. You go to bed hungry, nobody wins.
Right.
So there's a nurture aspect where we have to feed this kid. The structure aspect is saying like, no, I'm not going to make 2 dinners because you're not in the mood. There is structure there.
Right.
And so you find a compromise solution that upholds the structure. I can't do 8 dinners a day, but I also nurture. I also understand that this dinner isn't working for you. How can we solve your problem? Oh, you have a solution. Go do your solution. That's structure and nurture.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad. This is going to be a snippet out of the long one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, hey babe, let's listen to this together. Fantastic conversation on that. Anyway, so I do appreciate that insight. Is there anything else from the large family perspective that as you've grown into, that you've had conversations with other people that maybe either are struggling or like they didn't really take into consideration, or that you've just found that was been, very interesting and the life, as you said, adult male 42?
Yeah. No, I think there's an aspect of loneliness that comes with a large family, because like, no, I can't just, hop out and hang out with, but like the demands of our family are truly, there's no way to do the math without understanding that the demands of the family are more when there's this many more of them. And so we're making trade-offs. There are things that we've given up to have a family that looks like our family, but like, I'm not sitting at home every day feeling resentful about it. My family is the thing that I love most, like the thing that brings me the most energy, even though it is so challenging, because this is a calling and because it's built in, it's in my bones. Like this is what I want to do most. I recognize that like some of these trade-offs we made still make me a better person. It still give me a life that it's not the life that I would have imagined when I was 18, where I have freedom to do more or whatever. It's not at all. Like I never would have imagined. I didn't come from a big family. Yeah. But that doesn't mean it's not beautiful and it's not lovely. It doesn't mean it's not right. I love my life. Like it's challenging. And there are things that I cannot do that I might do otherwise. But like, life is full of compromises, and the trade-offs we made to get to where we are beautiful and worthy and holy. And the place we ended up is the right place. And like everybody's life is difficult, man. And like my life is difficult as well.
So as we're wrapping up here, Tyler, and I do appreciate your time. I want to ask you, so I always ask a special question. I don't know if you went all the way through any of my podcasts, but I ask a special question. So one of the more recent ones, and I think it's the most appropriate too, because it'll be very interesting to hear what you have to say, is if you had an extra day to live in your life, would you want to live it in the past or the future?
Well, that's a great question. And after this day, now I got to get to the rules. After this day, I go back to the day I'm at now.
Correct.
I'm going to go to the past. I'm going to live that future day one way or the other. I'd rather go back to a day that I particularly felt connected to or loved, like draw those feelings back and get back to running where I am.
Gotcha.
What day? I don't know.
No. It's been one of my favorite questions to ask people, because you get both. Yeah. Which some people have experienced either trauma, passing of a loved one or whatever, and they want to go back and they're like, I wish I could have had one more opportunity or chance or whatever. And other people go like, I'm happy with where I'm at. I would be very curious to see where I'm in the future, or where my kids are in the future, or whatever else. And it's fascinating to me to hear sort of the background, because some people, they're like immediate when they answer, like instantaneous boom. And then some people, like you just did, sort of sit and think about it a little bit too. So I think it's a fascinating question to ask people. So I appreciate that.
Maybe it was hard for me because the bottom line is I want to live where I'm at.
Yeah.
You know, like that's sort of like how I operate.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting definition. I looked it up a while back between ruminating and meditating, right? Like the whole negative connotation, if you will, of ruminating compared to like meditating and using that as a positive energy and force going forward. So, but Tyler, I want to give you the opportunity to see if you had anything else, to wrap up with now that we think about the conversation we had. Any other tidbits, anything else, questions, comments, concern, anything else that you have? No,
this is the thing that I love. Everything I talked about is like the things that I love most. And so like I'm on social media on Facebook. My name is Tyler Fuller. The blog is on Instagram. It's Unremarkable Conjecture. My email is tylerjakefuller@gmail.com. And so like every part of this is a whole solar system of experience and information. So if something hits and you want more, you want to like just chat about it. Like, this is what I do, and I'd love to do that. You feel free to reach out to me directly, follow up with the resources we listed. But yeah, if you're in here exploring, like, God bless you. Do a good thing and do it the best you can. Personally.
Well, again, I want to say thanks for coming on, Tyler. It's been an amazing experience. Thanks for coming on People Add Value Experience. And I personally got a ton of value, which is literally what this is for. And I cannot wait to get this shared out and get some responses for people. So again, thanks very much.
Appreciate thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right. Thanks.